Okay.
Okay, we're kind of picking up in the middle of a recording, but I guess now is as good a time to talk as any. So, Manuel, you're reading Tertullian, and I know all of you guys are reading the Church Fathers. And, Manuel, I'm asking you if you understand what you're reading because we have noticed that with a lot of the people who are reading the Fathers, or even reading the Bible for that matter, but it seems to be worse with the Fathers, a lot of you guys don't understand what you're reading. And it's because you're not used to reading. You've spent a long time on the internet, a long time on YouTube, watching videos, and what you do read is not very eloquent or uh, verbose English. It's really dumbed down internet jargon kind of English. It's not really. It's not taking advantage of the vast array of English words, but only a small number. And it's using the shortest sentences with the most mundane just vocabulary. And so you guys really need to start looking in your dictionary more often, every single day. When you're reading a sentence, if you don't understand that sentence, you need to look up the words that you don't understand. You are wasting your time if you're going to read a sentence and then say, I don't understand it, and then just keep reading. Even if you have to inch your way through these writings, understand that your task before you is to look up the definitions of words. Don't read a sentence and be content not to understand it, okay?
Yep. Wait, can I add something to
Yeah.
that?
Yes, Isaiah.
So something I would recommend, um, it can be useful. So before you read a paragraph or a passage, just skim through, highlight any words that you're unfamiliar with, and then, pull it up on like a doc or something, and then have the word with the definition next to it. So that way you can just refer to the doc while you're reading, than having to individually search up each word. So that can be something useful. And then also Aramis, if y'all know, he's making a vocabulary workshop. And
There
you
are
can also like quiz yourself on words that you see commonly used in early church fathers' writings.
Yeah, but look up the definitions, guys. And if you do that, you'll become a really good reader very fast. Nolan and Christian and Aramis were not big readers. The public school system fails us. I was homeschooled, so I was not as badly damaged by the public school system. It does so many things. It not only fails to teach you, but public school makes you hate reading, makes you feel like reading is a chore. And I hope you guys all get to make progress quickly in that and get over that feeling and develop a feeling of thankfulness and just see what an adventure it is to get to read. And I hope you get to enjoy it. But you've just got to get past this hurdle of not understanding what you're reading. Make use of the dictionary. It's very easy to look up words. I had to do the same thing, guys. Even though I did a lot of reading as a teenager, I still had to look up the dictionary all the time when reading the Church Fathers. And I still occasionally have to look up the definitions of words because the early church and a lot of just the writers in that time period made full use of their language's vocabulary.
Lexicon.
Yeah, and so become more knowledgeable and learn the definitions of words. It's a wonderful thing that each language, especially the Greek language, has such a depth of meaning in every word. They have such nuance between words, and it's very useful to you guys to have a deep understanding of things and not just the kind of language that a baby or a small child would use. So embrace it. Embrace having a great vocabulary. You guys text a lot. I'm sure when you text, you use very simple language, very short sentences. So your conversations with other people are mind numbing. They don't really. Oh, my own brain is fading, but they don't really stimulate you to think outside the box. And the way people write online is terrible too. So yeah, get used to reading. Get used to looking up definitions of words. Expand your vocabulary.
I
Okay,
used
so
to hate reading.
you did too, Brian. And
Yeah, me
yeah,
too.
how soon did that?
Yeah.
How frequent or how recently did that change for you?
Uh, well, at first it was reading the Bible. I mean, at first I used to before I was even reading scripture. Uh, I would hate reading because I was forced to at school, and it was just so boring, like you were saying. So I
Hmm.
could relate to that. And then going over to scripture, It was very easy to read for multiple hours. So now, moving that over to reading the church fathers, it's the more I do it, the more I like it. So now I'm actually like really enjoying what I'm reading. Sometimes it may be boring because I don't really find anything interesting, but at the same time, I'm still looking and trying to pay attention to the text. Because for me, I'll I think a lot of the books I've read using an AI reader, just because like I don't know. For me, reading out loud sometimes it can get very tedious to read it out loud for some reason. So I'll just play the AI and listen to it that way. And in doing that, I've been able to read a lot because the AI reads, and I'll just pause it and highlight things, underline things, whatever I come across. I'll share things in like the Church Father quotes channel, and I'll just keep reading. But yeah, the AI reader has been a help to me to read, and then sometimes I don't use it. Sometimes I'll just read without it, and that's fine as well. But it's been recent though that I've not recent. Actually, never mind. I'm gonna just shut up. I'm not talking.
That's great. So you do it from your phone. You use the 11 Labs, or do you use a computer?
I've been using. I'm pretty sure it's 11 Labs. Let me see.
That's what I use.
11 Reader. I've been using 11 Reader.
That's a great one. That's great.
Is there 11 Labs?
Well, 11 Labs is just the computer version. That's what Aramis uses to make all of his online translations.
Or you mean audiobooks?
Right, exactly.
I feel like some of the voices he has is really cool. I wish I could have those on on here on the app
Yeah,
at
me too.
least.
Well, I think it's more
It's only on the
advanced
computer.
on the computer version.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah,
Wait,
you
it's a
can
computer version?
yeah, you can literally sample any voice on the internet and it will recreate it. It could recreate my voice or Aramis's voice.
I'm gonna do your voice,
You
Luke.
serious?
Yeah, any voice, guys. They've done Mario's voice. They've done all kinds of movie characters.
Uh,
You can do anybody.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, you could do Arnold Schwarzenegger. You could do Biden or Trump or
I'm about to record my voice and just have myself read to me. That's possible.
yeah. It was a little creepy when I did mine for the first time, but it was very realistic.
I'm actually interested in that. So you said it's 11 uh,
Labs.
labs?
Yep, it's the most advanced AI voice synthesis software right now. And there is a free version, but just like everything, if you want to really go crazy with it, then you need to pay a little bit of money every month, like $10 or something.
Does Hermes pay?
Aramis, do you have the subscription version? Yeah, he does. So does Nolan.
Hmm.
Dang, those guys are blessed. All right. Uh,
Now, guys, don't be doing the dang thing, all right? No more of that. It's just a
oh,
substitute. It's idle words on the one hand, but it's also just a substitute for something you probably shouldn't be doing.
oh,
It's just too
yeah.
close. It's,
Yeah,
remember, we've
I
talked
never
about it
meant it
before.
in that way.
I know.
Okay,
Just be careful with it.
that's fine. Thank you.
You guys are very humble. I love how you guys always you receive correction well. I used to do it too, guys. I was one of those people always going around saying dang and darn and all that stuff, but it's better if we just don't have idle words. There was even a period where I was almost experimenting all of a sudden with using obscenities. I had never done it my whole life, and then I lived with my dad, and in my dad's house, there's just a lot of stuff because we had moved, and my dad doesn't know how to get rid of stuff either. I'm afraid he's going to become a hoarder or something, if you've ever seen what that is. But just there's so much stuff in the house, and I would trip over stuff in the house so frequently, especially at night. My dad would keep all the lights off, and it was just dark all the time, even during the daytime. And so I'd trip over and over again, and I tripped so many times I was getting angry, and I felt this urge to say bad words. And I was getting so close to doing it for a few days, I realized this is becoming really bad. I've never felt tempted like this before because I keep stubbing my toes, only my little toe every time in the same place over and over. So I said, I said I gotta do something. So instead of just saying nothing, I started blurting out something, but I said I need to say something that praises God. So I'd say something like, praise the Lord, or something like that. And eventually the urge to use the obscenity went away. But we just shouldn't have idle talk as much as we can. And if we do get hurt, let's teach ourselves to say something righteous. And we're all tempted in our daily conversations to use filler words like, you know what I'm saying, you feel me, and things like that. We should try to gut that out too. It's not that it's a sin in itself, but it is idle talk, and we don't want our mind to be filled with just idleness. We want our speech to be edifying and seasoned with salt. And I think you'll find that even your mind will work better if you only speak what you really mean to say, something that's important, something useful.
I feel like sometimes
Um,
it is so difficult to hold something back. Like I'll hear someone say something, and then like I just have this feeling, just trying to, like, this feeling in me, like, say this, and it's so hard sometimes to just keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, I've been meditating on that. Like, not really meditating because I thought about it. And the answer is stop being. What it is something that I struggle with. Yeah, maybe have some advice on that.
Impulsiveness, you mean, with your tongue?
Yeah.
Well, I think we've all struggled with it. James says that the tongue is a fire, a restless evil, and full of deadly poison. So we all have had to struggle with that. James says we all stumble in many ways, and the tongue is one of those last things to be conquered. After your actions, it's the tongue, and then it's your thoughts. But Raheem and whoever was just speaking, it's not as hard as you think. You should take Maurice for your example. Maurice recently has gone on a fast from speaking. He carries around a little whiteboard with him, and that's how he communicates with the guys and with us. It's extremely admirable. We are so proud of him, so impressed. And I won't deny, we told him he should do it because he had a real problem with his tongue. But wow, what a change when a man restricts himself and bridles his tongue. And you find that this person just he seems so wise when a person is quiet all the time, especially someone who you knew to speak a lot at one time, and now you see him so self-controlled. You have a lot of respect for that person all of a sudden, and you kind of wish to do it yourself. I wish I could do it. I will do it, actually, as soon as I'm able to. I don't think I'm able to do that right now, but
Amen. Hey, I just joined Luke.
yes, Elisha, how are you?
I'm doing good. Yes, obviously, guys, as you may know, I live with Maurice, and he really inspires me. And when, like, in the middle of the day, I'm just like, you know what, Maurice? I want to do what you're doing. I want to fast from speaking. And so I just do it. I'm just like, I'm not going to speak for like the entire day. And first I set a timer for an hour. I don't speak for an hour besides like something vitally important, like maybe a Luke question that like he wanted me to tell Maurice. And so I tell him that's it. That's all I say for the entire hour. And I'm like, let me double it, 2 hours. Let me double that. And then I didn't speak for this entire day until it feels really sobering and
It's more doable
really
than you
helps
realize.
you.
Yes, Raheem. Don't think it's out of your reach. You could do that if you want to. It's one way. If you were just to keep silent all the time, you wouldn't sin with your speech at all. That's like a third of all the sins eliminated. A third of all types of sin gone. There's actions, words, and thoughts. And if you were to eliminate evil actions and then eliminate evil words and idle words, wow, you've just got one last obstacle, and that's your thoughts to overcome. You should try it, Raheem. Righteousness really is within reach. You just have to make it's you know what it is, guys? Righteousness is very simple. It's just hard. It's not that it's complicated. It's so simple. It just takes some effort. It takes some conscious habit changing. where all throughout the day you say, I'm going to remember this. This is my mission for the whole day, is I'm going to do this thing. I'm not going to give in to this temptation. I'm going to resist it the whole day. And it requires that you make reminders throughout the day. Keep the watches. Pray throughout the day. Meditate on the word every day. Engage in daily righteous speech with your brothers throughout the day, not just once or twice, but throughout the day. And you'll find that avoiding sin is a lot easier. It has to be a habit, though.
Luke, I have a question on, I guess, similar to the subject. Um, what's it called? I was reading from Cyprian, and he was going through his, or it was a treatise. I think it was four, and he's going through the Lord's Prayer, and I think he's going over the part where it's forgive us of our sins. He ends up saying that the Lord, I just use a filler word, that the Lord said those words, forgive us of our sins, to teach us that we all sin daily. And I was thinking of that. I was like, huh, I wonder if that applied to Cyprian himself. Like, what did he mean by we? Because, like, he's a bishop, right? He was supposed to be someone above reproach. And, you know, man, I gotta stop saying, I'm sorry.
I do it too. And we say, like.
Yeah, it's a hard one, dude. It'll take me a lot of self control and having to pause for a few seconds to catch my train of thought.
It's okay. It's us being uncomfortable with silence or not wanting to seem like someone who doesn't know what to say. But you actually sound worse if you say like or. You sound worse doing that than if you just take little breaks between your words. Sometimes people sound eloquent, but they actually aren't eloquent. They just have cut out all the ums from their speech. But anyway, Brian, keep going.
So I was wondering about Cyprian, him saying that that the Lord said, forgive us of our sins, to teach us that we all sin daily. But Cyprian was a bishop, so I would assume he was a man who was above reproach, someone who was very righteous. So I wasn't sure if, like, what he meant by we sin daily. Is he talking about just believers in general? Is he talking about sins of the thoughts, sins of the actions? Because I know that you mentioned Origin. Because there it goes again. Origin's a guy I've read who, I'm sorry, Origin's someone who, as I read him, I see that he speaks a lot about righteousness, a lot about resisting sin. So I just by reading him, I can tell that he was a very righteous, God fearing man.
It's an easy
Uh,
explanation, Brian. No one else is
yeah.
accusing Origin of sin. No one else can observe sin in him or hear sin come out of his mouth. But we accuse ourselves. Origen accuses himself, and so does Cyprian, and so do all the fathers, calling themselves the worst of sinners. Even
Yes,
James
I
does that.
realize that.
When James says we all stumble in many ways, I mean, James is being very humble in saying that. James calls it a stumble to do even the tiniest thing. He's not talking about angry outbursts or things like that. When they accuse themselves, they're talking about even the tiniest little slip up, and it's actually in thoughts that they're talking about. But in
When
actions,
they say that,
yes, in actions, these men are living the most righteous lives, and no one can bring anything against them.
that's what I was assuming when he said that, because it didn't make sense for him to be a bishop and then he's out here doing
Oh, of
things
course
that
not.
are
Nobody can
blatantly.
observe it. No, that is just
Yeah.
humility. And the only way to achieve perfection is to accuse yourself constantly, and to accuse yourself even for minute things. But when you read about Peter in Recognitions, do you not get the impression that that man is like an angel walking the earth, or almost like he's Jesus himself?
He
I,
would be like Jesus if you saw him, though, right?
yes. Oh, you would just say I'm basically with Jesus here. We're with Peter. He is truly a representative of Jesus while Jesus is gone.
Mm.
And that's how it's supposed to be. People are supposed to feel like, when they meet Christians, they're supposed to feel like they've met Jesus. They're supposed to be brought to account for their sin and called to repentance. They're supposed to feel very loved. They're supposed to hear wisdom and knowledge that they don't hear from anybody else. They're supposed to see an example of self-control, self-restraint, and holiness. It's supposed to be unmatched. I hope to
Okay.
attain that someday. We should all have that goal.
So just to, I guess, get an overview of what you said when I brought up Cyprian, you said that when Cyprian said that he's just accusing himself for maybe small things that he thoughts or words. Uh, there it goes again. This is gonna be something I have to truly control my tongue with, Luke.
Hey, it's good though. It's a good challenge. Are you up to the task, Brian?
I'm up for it. It's just it just happens sometimes. I'm trying right now to,
Well, I do it too. Don't you notice that I say like and you know?
yes. Just it's so strange. Just trying to talk, focusing on not saying those things, it makes talking so much more difficult.
I noticed it too because I was saying it and I'm going, oh no, I have to check my own speech here and make sure I'm not doing it. Well, don't worry
Yeah.
about it, Brian. The worst thing is the silly phrases. The I'm worried about you guys using. Oh, I don't know how to say it. How do I say it now? The gangster lingo, the uneducated lingo. I want you guys to try to sound respectable. All right? And I want you to use the vocabulary of the language that you speak. I want you to use it to the fullest. Don't put it to waste.
Amen. Yes, I caught myself saying, "I've been done that," or "I've been done
I've
that,"
been done
or
that. All right, let me tell you something, guys. Now, some of you guys
let's
really don't
see, you
even.
heard
Yes, you don't
or
even
something.
know you're doing it. A lot of you guys don't even realize that you're using some bad grammar. But let me go over some things that I can think of. Okay, it's ask, not ax. Do you guys know that? A-S-K, ask. I don't think I've really heard anybody do that, but it is ask. Um, it's I could not care less, not I could care less. If you say I could care less, that means you do care, at least a little. So if you say I couldn't care less, that means you simply do not care at all. Uh, what are some other phrases? Seen it. If you say I seen it, then you should say I saw it. Those are things that come to me.
I think I did that before.
I have seen it in the past, but I saw it. Okay, those are just a few guys. I'm just saying, just try your best. You know, try to use the language properly. It's not a sin, guys. And I'll tell you what. It's not that you are actually like giving Christianity a bad name by being uneducated. It's just that deliberately doing it is not so good. You shouldn't deliberately sound uneducated. If you no, don't even realize you're doing it, it's not so bad, guys. But just if you can avoid it, if you know what English is, then try your best just to use the language. But I think this is a perfect opportunity to point out, guys, that the apostles were very uneducated, and when they spoke, they sounded like rednecks. They sounded like, well, I'm sure they had very thick accents, probably like a redneck would have. And you remember in recognitions of Clement that they make fun of Barnabas for his accent, that he sounds so rustic, so from the country. And even in their language, guys, just as we have Southerners and Texas accents, they had accents too, in Greek and in Latin. And so I'm not saying that having an accent is a bad thing, but still make use of the language and don't abuse language. Do your best to increase in learning and become wiser and expand your vocabulary and get better at reading, because guys, knowing how to read And knowing how to speak really is useful, especially knowing how to read. Knowing how to read is more important than knowing how to speak because you have much more need to learn than you do to teach anybody or to say anything. So learn language and learn how to read and take joy in it. That's what I'm emphasizing here.
Since we're talking about the tongue, a few days ago, I was. Um, there it goes again. One moment.
It's okay.
Okay, so what I was saying was that I was with my wife and I was sitting next to her. I was talking with her, and out of nowhere, like, there it goes again. I was just trying to speak with her like normally, and out of nowhere, I nearly like spoke a cuss word directed at her by accident, and I didn't it didn't like I didn't say it. I caught myself before I even got halfway through, but I was shocked at myself, really confused. Like, what? How did this happen? I didn't expect me to ever do that since I don't speak that way, and I'm not sure if I pointed it back to maybe what I was listening to earlier in the day, because because maybe it's a different one. Luke is saying cuz,
Cause
yeah,
oh, it's
instead of
okay if you
because.
abbreviate things. That's if all abbreviations were bad, we would all have to say do not and will not instead of don't and won't. I don't think there's anything wrong with
No,
abbreviating
yeah,
things.
no, it's fine, it's fine.
I
What
say
was I talking
gonna.
about again?
I say gonna a lot instead of going to.
Gonna. That's gangster, Luke.
Yeah, I guess somebody could say there's a big double standard, but they're just some phrases. I don't like how they sound, to be honest. I don't like how you feel me sounds.
Yeah, I forgot what I was talking about, but I just wanted to say that.
You lost
Oh
control of
yeah,
your
I
tongue,
remember.
and you're wondering where it came from. And are you wondering how to beat that habit?
No, I haven't really had a issue with like saying cuss words at all. It's just I think earlier in the day I was listening to things on YouTube I shouldn't have. It was like a documentary on something and there was all the cussing in it. And then I just went out and then I was talking with my wife and then I just out of nowhere it just almost slipped out. And I felt bad about it right away. I was like, no way that just happened. And yeah, it's has that ever happened to anyone where you're just going about your business, talking with someone, and then out of the or out of nowhere,
Yes, Brian.
just yeah,
We all have our own struggles, Brian. I don't know if we've talked about this subject before, but it's a gift that we all have different struggles. That some of us struggle with using bad language, obscenities or profanities or curses, and then others of us struggle with things like lusting after food, being gluttons. Others have, well, almost everybody has a tendency to lust after men or women, depending on if you're a man or a woman. And then others have a lust for greed, and then some people they have a tendency to be vain about their appearance or something else, their clothes, and others have too much love for entertainment. They want to go back toward the movies or the video games or music. So we've all got these different weaknesses. Usually, though, we usually have just a weakness toward like two or three. Usually it's a small number. Nobody has a weakness toward every vice. I've never met somebody, I doubt there is anybody who is just in every type of sin. Usually you're weak in lusting or, you know, or you're weak in something else, like you have angry outbursts or something. Very rare for somebody to have a bunch. And I think that's a blessing because we get to observe each other and we're able to see, like, oh, well, Brian never has a problem with gluttony. I do. But, so I'm able to look at him and I'm able to see what it's like to be perfectly controlled in that area. And then he's able to look at me in some area that I have. Maybe I never have angry outbursts, and that's something he struggles with, and he wonders, how do you do it, Luke? I want to spend more time with you. I want to see what your habits are. I want to learn from you how you got over that. That's very good for us guys to be able to admire each other in different respects, even if it's not some actual virtue in us. Maybe we just never feel tempted in that way. Maybe we never even overcame it at some point, but we just never even feel tempted. Like with food, guys, I just don't feel tempted towards sweets very much. But I know a lot of people who are. They need their soda or something. They think they do. But I've just never struggled. I just don't like food very much. And yeah, Willem, we'll see you later. God bless you. God be with you. Oh, he's gone already. Anyway, yeah, Brian, I don't struggle with feeling tempted to use bad language, but I have brothers who do struggle with that, and so we just support each other. We have to give each other good advice about it, and sometimes we gotta rebuke each other about it if we're slipping.
I feel like more recently I've been using maybe the word. Like, I'll just maybe be talking about a group of people or a specific person. I'll just call them retarded or something like that. Like I don't know. It's just something that I just been sort of doing, even though I should probably just not say that because it's not edifying. Unless it's maybe necessary if I'm actually speaking with the person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've noticed a few words that I've just randomly used when talking in random conversations that I've had that perhaps like a year ago I barely used.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that. Uh, I'm not really sure why, but yeah. Oh yeah, Manuel, didn't you want to ask Luke a question?
Yeah. I don't know if he's
I'm
doing
here.
something though.
No, I'm not busy.
Oh, oh. So I was gonna ask like, is it like bad to like for well, I'm gonna just say it. So I asked my dad for a Septuagint Bible for this Christmas. Is that like a bad thing? To like ask from like my father for things or
Well, how old are you, and do you have a job?
I do.
How old are you, Manuel?
I'm 26. It is the last time I try to order it. It just always just keeps like either just failing to come or delaying.
Have they refunded you?
Yeah, but I can never get it to my house, so I just asked him if it's possible if he could get it for me and then send it to me.
Hmm. What makes you think it would be easier for it to arrive? I mean, don't you live at the same location?
Well, as my dad or
Yeah.
no, my dad lives in Pennsylvania. I live in Massachusetts.
Hmm. Do you live out in the country?
Um, like in Mass, sort of.
I just mean, do you live out far away
Oh,
in the country, or do you live in a city?
I live in like kind of city, yeah, city-ish,
You
city
don't have
area.
you don't have problems with your mail, do you?
Mm, Well, sometimes I do. I have problems like where when I would order or when I would like yeah like order stuff, and sometimes I have like a PO box, but it just won't go there sometimes, and then I just don't end up never getting it, or just always I just always has problems with it. Unless I think it's only USPS that has that problem though. I never had problems with like UPS or Amazon or FedEx.
Well, um, I would try to buy it with my own money if I were you,
All right.
just so that I wouldn't be indebted. I mean, all of us are indebted enough to our parents as it is, but I would encourage all of you guys to learn independence from your parents as much as possible. Who do you live with right now, Manuel?
My mother.
I see. Why would you not ask your mother why your father?
Mm, my mother doesn't really have a lot of finances.
I see, and
That's
your
why.
dad does.
Yes, my dad does.
Well, I mean, if you have your own job, you have the ability to buy it, or are you just very short on money?
No, I'm not short on money. I just try to order it and it just never comes in. Like I've ordered it like once or twice already. And it just never. It just I'm always having trouble with it.
Well,
So I just like asked him.
you should try to buy it, like share screens with me or something, and I'll help you order it.
I
You
get
could
it from
also
like
s-
Amazon.
you could also send the money to your mother or father, and then they can buy it that way without you having to ask them to use their money.
My mom doesn't know how to work all that like PayPal Cash App thing. She doesn't really have a debit card. She doesn't work. And yeah, I could probably just send the money to my father. But he usually just says, don't worry, I'll take care of it." I don't know. I'll talk to him about it.
Hmm. Will, I want you to be able to have a Bible,
Yeah, I
but
have a KJV and the quote unquote apocryphas, but those are KJVs as well.
I see. Manuel, it doesn't sound like your situation is very good. What is your situation? Do you have siblings?
What with my yeah, I do.
And your parents are
I have
divorced?
no my parents. Well, I was born out of wedlock. My father and mother weren't married. My father is married now to his wife in Pennsylvania.
Horrible. And your mother
Yeah,
is still by herself?
it's yeah.
Does she have
She
boyfriends?
she she does, yeah. And I'm not in support of it. I've already kind of made it clear to her.
Oh, I'm sure you're not. I'm sure you haven't had any good experiences with her boyfriends.
No, I like they like fornicated and stuff, and I was just like, yeah, he just I just need to like move out.
You do, Manuel. And that seems to be the
Yeah,
story with so many of the guys we're meeting online. It's just that they're in the worst place, living with their mothers. Their moms are fornicating with guys. Their dads are out of the picture. I mean, have you have you tried to speak to them? I mean, it's so hard to get people to repent. They don't listen to us. My own parents don't listen to me, guys. So not much
right.
hope with your parents.
Well, I tried to talk to my dad about it, and he was just very. He's not really into religion, and I've told him before like he needs to repent, especially with his anger. His anger is really bad, and then he got really upset about it. And I said the same thing to my mom, and she got pretty upset about it too.
Well, that's
She
why
thinks like
I wouldn't be dependent on them at
religion,
all.
right? They think religion is too like controversial. and they don't want like really not much to do with it. Like my dad, he just like when he was younger, he had read the Bible, but he read it twice, but he still doesn't understand like simple things like how Jesus like is perfect and Son of God. He doesn't really like believe that. He doesn't even believe Jesus was perfect. And I just was like, okay, well. Then my mom, she's just like straight Spanish, so I try to talk to her about it, and she says she does believe in God and stuff, but she does like a lot of like bad things. So
Yeah, it's not that, oh, I'm not religious or something like that, Manuel. The issue is that they don't want to repent. They love their pleasures. They don't want to humble themselves. I don't know what I'm not religious means. I'm not religious means I love my sins. Don't bother me. Don't make me uncomfortable by calling me to repentance. It's not like it's just not their style or something. All people need to repent. All people need God. You should be upfront with them. But you can't be upfront with them if you're dependent on them. Have you noticed that?
yeah,
If they pay your bills or if you need them to buy you a book or something, you can't really just be upfront with them about anything. I couldn't be upfront with my dad while I lived with him. Or rather, when I was upfront with him, I had to leave immediately. So I would work on getting independent of your mother, Manuel. She's destroying you. That environment at home is terrible. I'll bet it's very, very difficult for you to cease from sin when you're in that demonic household.
Yeah, I
yeah,
never realized how important environment was until I left.
Is
But
your
it is very important.
is your mom Catholic, Manuel?
I think she was. I went to Catholic school when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
Sunday school.
Most Hispanics are Catholic, and it's because
Yeah,
the Catholic Church evangelized Mexico, and so they're pretty much all Catholic over there.
yeah. What's the thing about like the history of like, because they're like really like based on miracles more than like actual, biblical and historical things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you
I
saw
mean,
us
when I was talking,
posting about that in the server today.
yeah, like the um the Mary portrait. When I was talking to that quote unquote priest from the Catholic monastery, because I delivered to this monastery, I delivered to two of them, and I was just asking the guy about like the pictures of Mary, and he explained it to me just like how I saw in like videos and stuff, and it was just confusing that this one guy was seeing Mary in a dream, and Mary was directing him, and Mary told him to grab like roses, throw them on the floor, and then like the big portrait came out, I guess came out, and
Yeah.
then he described the dress, like her legs, the way she's like standing, and that she's doing a dance under the dress, and I'm like, I don't understand
It's so
any of this, but
so bizarre. And then she's like, "Oh, see, I did it too, Brian." I said like, "No, but she says build a church in my name. Build one right here." Sounds like something Mary would say. I want a church, and everybody worship my image.
yeah, it's
You know
insane.
that there have been ecumenical councils, which the Catholics and Orthodox say are ecumenical, where one of their canons is churches are not to be built in the name of a saint. They say that's a horrible sin. It's going to lead to worshiping saints. And yet, I think practically every Catholic and Orthodox church now is named after a saint. Oftentimes named after people that aren't even actual saints, weren't actually righteous people, which is even worse. Can you imagine praying to people who you imagine are in heaven but are actually burning in Gehenna? I'm going to call to my patron saint, General so and so from some army, or Emperor or Empress so and so. I'm going to pray to them. So you're praying to a person who's burning in hell. Help me. And how do you think God feels about that? It's terrible, but they have convinced people to do,
The
calling
the
on
pro-
condemned people to save them. Yeah.
the process of, the process of praying to someone, like a human, isn't that degrading to the image of God? That you're bowing to something that's like you, that's equal to you.
Yes, something beneath you.
I wouldn't say beneath, because like we're the same.
Well, bowing to an image, is that the same?
No. Like praying to saint such and such.
Yeah, but they don't pray to saints without an image. So it is always bowing to something beneath you.
It's just such a carnal way of looking at it. Do you really think you could capture the essence of God in some pathetic painting? I think if you were to see, like when the apostles saw Christ on the mountain, it would be something beyond your comprehension, something that you could never even imagine. Do you really think in your imagination you could come up with what God looks like or something?
That's
Or
just what
Christ truly?
Eusebius says.
And I mean, they're definitely not going to worship what he actually looks like, like they're definitely not making a painting of what Christ actually looked like. So I think their argument is, well, we're making what his idealized, like what he looks like spiritually, but that just completely disregards what spiritual things are, something beyond your comprehension.
Can you explain to me how the process of apostolic succession was broken? Because I realized that I don't really understand it.
Well, tell me what you do understand, Raheem, or have you listened to many of the calls?
Yeah,
Did you
well, I
listen?
understand.
How many
Well,
of
I
the?
understand.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand that in the year 313, the Council of Nicaea, Emperor Constantine, right? They had this council, and that's when the government started to get involved in Christianity. And it wasn't the bishops that were doing the appointment of other bishops anymore. It was this emperor. He was the one who chooses who should be ordained. And through that, the process of apostolic
That's what
succession
Scripture
got
alludes to.
broken.
Well, you got it.
That's it. Then.
Yes. Constantine, after about 330 AD, was in charge of the appointment of every single bishop. And then his son Constantius continued it, chose many men to be bishops who were extremely wicked, had no business. They weren't even Christians, but he was calling them bishops. And then, after these men eventually died, other Christians came after them. And oftentimes, these guys were choosing all the presbyters as well, all the deacons, and going around ordaining other bishops. That's another horrible thing, is that these guys were not just chosen to become bishops, but they were becoming patriarchs, guys. Patriarchs of Alexandria, patriarchs of Antioch and Constantinople and Rome. And they were going and ordaining all the other bishops. So massive numbers of bishops, all bishops were being ordained by these big patriarchs who were heretics. And then after they die, they have a new patriarch selected by an emperor, and you'd have multiple. Like for Constantinople, you had an unbroken lineage of, I think, about 5 or 6 Arians being bishops of Constantinople. And at that time period, all of the other bishops all around the world were also Arians. So they were even denying Christ's divinity. And these guys were supposedly ordaining other people to be bishops. Now, can somebody explain to me how you can be an Arian, you can deny Christ's divinity, and still be a Christian? How can you even be a Christian, let alone a bishop? The early church says you're not even a Christian if you deny Christ's divinity. These people would have us believe that oh no, they were not more just Christians, they were actually bishops. And they say after this line of completely false ordinations, some of which were done by murderers, We know that Paul, Bishop of Constantinople, was murdered by Eusebius of Nicomedia, not our Eusebius, but a different Eusebius, strangled by him with another bishop, murdered this guy, and replaced him as a bishop, and ordained many other people to be bishops. And we're saying, yeah, these guys are bishops. And the Catholics and Orthodox derive their apostolic succession from murderers like that, men who ordained other false bishops, and then that guy ordained another false bishop, and then that guy ordained another false bishop, and then that guy, well, he ordains a real bishop, they say. How can you receive a real ordination from false bishops? A lineage of false bishops. But that's what they would have us believe. And Raheem will show the evidence of that. We've had a few calls where we've gone over it, and you can hear more details. What you really should do is read some of the books, some of the church history books, such as Rufinus's church history, Eusebius's church history, Socrates Scholasticus's church history, Sozomen's church history, and Athanasius' history of the Arian controversy. And they talk about how apostolic succession was destroyed.
I was planning to like read Eusebius's church history. I know I just messed up. I wanted to get through 80% of his writings.
So be it. You don't need to worry about bishops right now. Just worry about learning the doctrines. I know we are all so eager to have a bishop. We want a priest. We're saying, where am I supposed to go? But if you care about your soul, focus on the Ante-Nicene writings. Be apart from a bishop for a while. Don't let that urge take over. And after you've seen what the Ante-Nicene Church says about ordinations, read, for instance, Apostolic Constitutions talking about what an ordination looks like. Or read Cyprian. He has Letter 67. We quote it very frequently because it has so much information about how ordinations in the church are supposed to go. And see what a contrast there is in their ordinations and then post-Nicene. Just totally destroyed ordinations. We were talking about this too with Nolan and Aramis recently. You know, the way the Catholics and Orthodox make it sound is if apostolic succession gets destroyed, then God has failed. Christ has failed. Even though Christ is said that it would happen, it was prophesied to happen, and it happened with Israel. If it happened with Israel, with a God-ordained institution of priests, and it was destroyed by false ordinations, well, who's to say it's impossible for Christians? What people misunderstand, or what they fail to grasp, is that this hierarchy of the church was made for our benefit. It was made for the well-ordering and structuring of the church. It was made so that the teachings of the church can be passed down more easily to people through wise teachers who are appointed through this great system that God set up, which would eradicate evil teachers from taking power. That's why a bishop had to be above reproach in every way. He had to be the husband of one wife. He had to have a good reputation with everybody, etc. And so these things were put in place for our benefit, but we destroyed it. Human beings destroyed this system. God didn't fail. We messed up the system that was supposed to give us good teachers and good priests, and in no way does that destroy Christianity. It just means that this great system God had in place for ensuring this wonderful succession of righteous men who had come from a good, perfect source, the apostles, we messed that up. We could have had it, we could have kept it going, but that was a responsibility God gave to us. He said, you keep this going. Keep this system pure. Don't defile it, don't corrupt it, don't merge with governments, or you'll destroy it. And
It follows.
yes.
You can finish.
Well, Athanasius and Hosius in History of the Arian Controversy, they both say that this was prophesied, it was warned against, and now, you've destroyed this wonderful gift. God gave us this gift called the priesthood, the high priesthood, and now it's been destroyed. So don't blame God, blame our leaders, but guess what, guys? It is possible to destroy this great order that God has set up. People can destroy it for the same reason that you can destroy a marriage. God invented marriage, husbands and wives being in charge of children. This is a God-ordained institution. It's even more natural than bishops because this is actual, it's part of God's creation. It's natural. we can destroy it. It's supposed to be that by having a mom and a dad, you ensure a well-ordered household, and that children learn the faith from their united mom and dad, teaching the same thing, disciplining together. But if people are evil, or if they have children out of wedlock, or if they fail to learn anything themselves and they have horrible discipline and they set a bad example to their children, they can have a wrecked marriage, totally wrecked marriage, and produce evil children. Just because God invented the institution of marriage doesn't mean that, oh, there's some guarantee that, it's just always going to be here. Do you guys know that the majority of children now are born out of wedlock? Not in marriages? And that's what happened in the church. Now the majority of people who are born are not born from mother church teaching them, in the organized institution, but we're born out separated from it. And the only way you can be a Christian is if you're separated from that wicked church. Because she's a whore. She's a prostitute now, going around. She's not with her husband. That's not just an analogy I thought up on the fly. That's the actual analogy. The church has become adulterous. She has become a prostitute. She didn't just leave her husband for another man. She left her husband for many men, just like Israel did. And God says Israel is a prostitute going around, joining herself to all the nations and adopting all their practices. Just as it happened in the Old Testament, it's happened in the New. So, yes, don't blame God. The institution was good, but there was no guarantee from God that that institution would last forever.
Yeah, it follows the story of mankind, right? Even how it started. God gave Adam this good thing, and then he granted him liberty. He tells him, "All right, Adam, it's your job to maintain this." Adam messed it up. With the Israelites, all right, we have a good thing going. They go and worship idols.
Yep, it wasn't God's fault. But God creates these authority structures to help us. Understand that's why husband and wife exist. It's to facilitate instruction for the child, discipline for the child, love for the child. And the whole system of the high priesthood exists for teaching the new believers, disciplining the new believers, and showing God's love to them. It's keeping us separate from the world and reflecting heaven on earth, Christ's relationship with his church, his bride. That's what we're supposed to have through the church's clergy, through the leadership system, interacting with the laity and taking care of the laity. But ever since the church became corrupted, the Catholics and Orthodox have taught that we have an obligation to submit to that totally corrupted, adulterous, prostitute church, even if she is corrupt. They say you owe her allegiance no matter what. Just obey, obey, obey. And that really defeats the purpose of having the church in the first place, because the church is supposed to make you separate from the world. It's supposed to instruct you in godliness and preserve the traditions. So if they fail to do that, what are you even gleaning from going to that church? Let's say you were somebody who said, well, listen, I know it's corrupt, but, I just respect the institution, and I'm going to try to be respectful to God by just going there. Well, is that why God made the church? Did God just make this leadership system of bishops, presbyters, and deacons just for the heck of it? Just because he just wants people to obey things? No, it's for our benefit. That's why God ordained bishops. It's so that we'll be taught. If they're actually evil and they're corrupting us, we've got to get far away from them. That's what the early church teaches. But the Catholics teach the opposite. They say even if they're evil, you got to obey. And that's simply wrong. And, that's a good question to start every discussion with a Catholics, is to say, hey, let's say hypothetically, if you can just do a hypothetical, which they struggle with, because they say, oh no, it's impossible for the church to fall away. Okay, hypothetically, if the church let's say your leadership did become a bunch of murderers, let's say they all endorse abortion, and they all endorse murder, which they do with war. Let's say they all endorse adultery, which they do with divorce and remarriage. Let's say they endorsed all kinds of wicked blasphemies. Let's say hypothetically they said there is no Trinity, there's a quadrinity, and Mary's the fourth God, which they kind of do. Let's say, they really just went all out here. Let's say they deny Jesus' divinity like they did with the Arians. And, what would you do? Would you just disobey them now, no matter what? And if they say, yeah, just obey them no matter what. And I say, okay, well, what if they just teach you that, you know, Jesus is not divine. He's not God's son by any means. There is no son. Let's just say they start teaching Islam. That's what the church turns into. Should we still obey it? And just test them that way, guys. Ask them a bunch of questions. And if they say, oh, that'll never happen, say, okay, I want you to practice doing a hypothetical. If you could please just humor me. Hypothetically, if the church did it, if they abandoned the faith, if they became totally corrupt, would you still go to church and participate with them? And that will reveal their honesty, guys. Because if they say, yes, I'm still going to go to that church, even if they're totally evil, even if they corrupt all the scriptures, and they're teaching a totally false religion and a false God, I'm still going to go there because God told me to. Well, then, guys, you know that's insane. They should know that's insane. And if they say, no, you actually should leave it if they become corrupt, but it hasn't happened yet, then you should say to them, okay, well, that's the real discussion then. Since you admit I should leave the church if they get corrupted and they start teaching us evil, they start teaching the church idolatry. Hypothetically, if they were teaching the church, teaching the Christians to be idolaters, I should get away. Now it's only up to me to prove that they teach idolatry. Let me prove it now. And then you show them what the church has always taught for 500 years. And it's quite clear. They are idolaters. It's quite clear that that was what Satan planned. Okay, now, I'm sorry, Raheem, I was talking for a long time. You were going to ask something.
I was. Did you answer my question?
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it was about apostolic succession.
Yes, apostolic succession was destroyed in all the 5 main patriarchates, which are the ones that ordain all the other bishops. And, yeah, that happened after around 330. There was a controversy that lasted until the 370s, so about 40 years. And so in the 370s, you finally had some bishops who were not Arians, but by that time you'd had multiple bishops in each of these cities who were Arians. And God let that happen so that you could see the faith was denied worldwide, and it was over. He didn't even just let there be one bishop in each city who was an Arian, but it was multiple. It's like 4 or 5 or 6 in a lot of these cities who denied the faith, and then the emperor would choose somebody else. He'd say, all right, here's a new bishop. They got this really great emperor named Theodosius, and he liked Christianity. He liked the old ways, and he said, all right, we're going to start agreeing with Jesus' divinity again. We'll approve that. Theodosius had this big council at Chalcedon. This is ridiculous thing that happened. So ridiculous. The last bishop of Constantinople had died, and he said, well, we're going to have a bishop who approves of Jesus' divinity. And so they have this little event where he says, draw me up a list of everybody here at this council right now. He says, we're going to ordain a new bishop right now, he says. And they say, okay, who's going to be the bishop? And he says, give me all the best candidates, from top to bottom. So they give him a bunch of candidates of all these very righteous presbyters, and they're saying, these would be the best guys to be ordained to be bishop. But they gave him a list of everybody who's present there at the council. There's a few hundred people there. And so Theodosius looks at this little list, this piece of paper they handed him, and he goes all the way down to the bottom of the list. And he chooses the person at the bottom of the list, and he says, who's that guy? I want him to be bishop. Ordain him right now. And they go, what? The guy at the bottom of the list, that's the person who was least qualified. They say, that guy's not even a Christian yet. He's a catechumen. And he said, nope. Put the robes on him right now. Ordain him bishop. And so they did. They took a catechumen, and they baptized him, and they put the robe on him, and they said, I guess you're a bishop. There was a huge controversy. A massive number of the bishops who were at this council, guys, which they say is one of the ecumenical councils, they said, Emperor, we're going to have to talk about this later. That's a little bit crazy. We've never done anything like that. We're not sure this ordination is valid. And they said, we need to have another council. A bunch of those bishops who were present said, we need to have another council where we talk about this ordination because this guy can't be bishop. He's a catechumen. He only just got baptized today. This is a completely uncanonical baptism and then uncanonical ordination, that an emperor could order someone to be baptized and then ordained. And so there was a huge controversy about it. And it lasted for a while, and then it fizzled out because the emperor said, nah, what I've said goes. But that's an example, guys, how even after Nicaea, or I'm sorry, not just after Nicaea, but even after the Arian controversy, which lasted for over 40 years, when you started having people ordained who did agree with Jesus' divinity, there were huge controversies about their ordinations, where even most of the bishops at that time were saying, these ordinations are not valid. And it doesn't matter
I
what.
think
Oh, go ahead, Raheem.
isn't the big question is like what the Catholic and Orthodox what they believe. Do they believe that these emperors they have authority?
That's such a good question, Raheem. Now, guys, the best way to refute any heresy is to ask good questions. If you have good questions, you can beat them. You don't even have to make any statements in a debate. You can just keep asking clever little questions. So, a good question to ask, Raheem, is the one you just asked. How much authority do these emperors have? How can an emperor command that another person be ordained? In order for the emperor to do that, wouldn't the emperor himself have to be above a bishop? And if they say, no, he doesn't have to be above a bishop, you say, okay, explain it to me. Is he equal to a bishop? Is he beneath a bishop in authority? If he's beneath a bishop in authority, he certainly can't command that the bishop be ordained. And you should ask, can an emperor have a person be ordained if he's not a Christian himself? Do you have to be a Christian emperor in order to do that? You should ask him other questions like, is the office of emperor a a church institution, or I'm sorry, a church office, or is it a secular office? You only have two options, guys. Is it a secular office or a church office? If they say, well, it's both. It's a combination. You should say, okay, explain that to me. I really like to understand. Because of course, if it's a secular office, that guy has no business in the church at all ordering somebody to be ordained. So is it a church office? And what they're going to do, guys, is they're going to say both. It's a church office and a secular office. Because God has ordained the emperor to have, he's going to be kind of like the Israelite king. He has special authority in the church. That's what they believe. They believe that in order to have an ecumenical council, an emperor has to convene it. So they really do believe in order to have a church council, this authority is required. So they're saying he's part of the church. He's participating in the church. He's causing church order to exist with his decrees. I mean, you can't even quell a heresy without an emperor saying, let's have an ecumenical council. By the way, guys, that's why they don't have ecumenical councils anymore in the Orthodox Church. They say we don't have any emperors to do it. Did you know that? So, okay, so the emperor he gets the authority to ordain, or, choose people to be ordained and to convene ecumenical councils because he's a Christian. So that means if he's not a Christian, he can't convene an ecumenical council? These are questions I'd love to ask a Catholic or an Orthodox. I can't wait to hear their response because I have a great question to ask them. If it is if you have to be a Christian to convene an ecumenical council, you can't be a pagan, right? If you're a pagan, can you choose who's going to be a bishop? And if they say, well, maybe you can be a pagan. I mean, that'd be hilarious. I don't even think I have to say anything. You can be a pagan and choose who's going to be bishop. Okay. Alrighty. Guess you're the true church then. If you say something like that, okay. But they have to say no, don't they, guys? Don't they have to say, no, you do have to be a Christian to be choosing other people as bishops, Got to be a Christian emperor. Okay, let's forego the whole argument that you have to resign your political and government office in order even to be a catechumen. Let's not even bring that up. I just want to bring up one point, Catholic or Orthodox. You say that Constantine had the authority to convene the first ecumenical council at Nicaea. Was Constantine a Christian when he did that? No, he was not even baptized. So he wasn't even a Christian according to their standard. And if anybody says, well, he did eventually get baptized, he was baptized while he was an Arian. And he was baptized by an Arian who was excommunicated from the church. So your ecumenical council was convened by someone who's not a Christian. Furthermore, Constantine, it's well known Constantine continued to worship pagan gods while he was emperor. While he even claimed to be a Christian, he worshiped pagan gods. He built a massive statue. He built multiple monuments in honor of the pagan gods, even after he called himself a Christian. In fact, we even have some of those monuments to this day. They still exist, where he dedicates them, to this god, that god. Apollo was one of his favorite gods that he would build monuments to. So you have a pagan convening an ecumenical council and choosing who will be ordained as bishops, starting with your first, the very earliest years after Christianity was legalized, with your first big so-called Christian emperor. Give me a break. So it all falls apart. And then, of course, his son Constantius was a wicked man. He was an Arian himself. There was never a time when he wasn't an Arian. And he's doing the same thing as his dad.
And these ecumenical councils, like, what's the purpose of them?
The Catholics and Orthodox are so stupid that they think the only way we can know whether something is a heresy, the only way we can know for sure what the Orthodox truth is if we have an emperor convene an ecumenical council. That's what they say. They say whatever the church fathers teach for the first 300 years of Christianity can be disregarded if an ecumenical council contradicts it. So the ecumenical councils got together starting in 325, and then in the early 300s they had a couple, and then in the 400s they had a couple, and then in 787 they had their last one, at least the last one which the Catholics and Orthodox agree on. And then the Orthodox had a lot of
What?
their own, and the Catholics had a lot of their own, but the Catholics and Orthodox they don't recognize each other's ecumenical councils after 787. So it's just them being stupid and saying something is not a dogma in the church unless an ecumenical council says so. But that's absurd for a million reasons, the most obvious one being, so no dogmas existed before 325 AD? People were being excommunicated for things that were not dogma? The Trinity was not a dogma? So I don't have to believe in the Trinity? And if they say, well, you do have to believe in it, it's just not a dogma. Does that make any sense? You're going to excommunicate me for believing something that the church just doesn't know? And if you admit that the church did know that the Trinity is a dogma, a dogmatic truth that cannot be compromised on, and that baptismal regeneration is true, and the Eucharist is true, if you do admit those things are dogma, well, now you have to admit that some things can be dogmatically true apart from an ecumenical council.
But why stop at the Ante-Nicene fathers? You say the same thing about the apostles, you know? What was the emperor
Was the emperor what, Raheem?
I was saying that if they're gonna say that, what about the Ante-Nicene fathers? With them, why not? What about the apostles? I'm sure the emperor wasn't involved in the dogma that they were opposing, um, the dogma that they were setting on the church.
Yep, they are forced to say that the apostles either didn't know things or that their apostles failed to hand down their teachings to their best taught and choice men who were selected for the priesthood, for ordination as bishops. Both of those are absurd. Both of them are directly refuted by the early church fathers, who say it's only the heretics who suggest that the apostles were either ignorant or that they kept certain knowledge hidden from the men that they ordained as bishops. Only the heretics suggest such a thing.
That's what Tertullian says, I believe, in On Prescription Against Heretics.
Yes, and Irenaeus says it as well. He says that the Gnostics say, well, the apostles delivered some things secretly. And they say, who did they deliver it secretly to? And they're like, well, to their trusted advisor, their most trusted men. They're like, what do you mean? They ordained people as bishops. The people who were best taught by them were ordained as bishops. Those bishops don't teach those things you're saying. So that's absurd to suggest that there were secret things given to the bishops, and that the bishops either didn't give it to us or just that the apostles never even gave those teachings to the bishops. But that's exactly what the Catholics say. They say, some of them will say, oh no, they did know that Mary was sinless and they did teach it. It's just nobody ever teaches it. It's like a secret doctrine. And worse than that, it's a doctrine that's contradicted everywhere. But it was just secret. I've heard them say it, guys. This is one of their arguments. They say, well, there are unwritten traditions. Wait until you hear them say that. There are some unwritten traditions. That's exactly what the Gnostics would say. And it's a meaningless statement. I mean, imagine saying, oh, well, we got some unwritten traditions. Well, what do you do about all the written traditions that contradict them? Did the church have two traditions going at once? First of all, a written tradition saying that Mary committed sins and that you should not bow down to images, and then a secret tradition saying actually Mary is sinless and you can bow down to images. Does that make any sense? Just two traditions, contradictory teachings floating around? Come on, we're not that stupid.
Hey Luke, can I read the passage from?
Yes, read it.
Okay, this is on prescription against heretics, chapter 25. But here is, as we have said, the same madness in their allowing indeed that the apostles were ignorant of nothing, and preached not any doctrines which contradicted one another, but at the same time insisting that they did not reveal all to all men, for that they proclaimed some openly and to all the world, whilst they disclosed others only in secret and to a few. Yeah,
That's a good one.
I think. Yeah. So he's basically saying what you said, that I think the heretics were claiming that the apostles, sure, they may have handed down some things, but then other things they handed down to secret men or only to a few people. But I think in earlier chapters, he speaks about how all the doctrines were handed down to the apostles by Christ and then to the churches. So that can be true.
Yep, it was complete, Brian. It was complete. They lied to us.
Luke, one thing that I thought about, oh, I'm gonna try to start implementing just not saying filler words like and stuff.
By the way, what was the reference that you were just giving me? Let me make sure I've got it. I'm pretty sure I do. I'm just double checking.
On prescription against heretics, chapter 25, like the first, the first few sentences. What was I gonna say again? Oh boy, what were we talking about? I hate when this happens.
It's these heretics who say that there was hidden knowledge, hidden teachings that the apostles either handed down to their boys, and that nobody ever gave us in writing, or they didn't even share them. It's just completely hidden, secret knowledge that only the Gnostics know. Do you see, Brian, that we are still dealing with the Gnostics? It's all just repeating.
Yes, the Protestants.
Yes, and the Catholics. They're saying we have hidden knowledge that nobody knew about. It took us a while. We finally brought it over.
I feel like the Catholics, when they appeal to Irenaeus talking about apostolic succession, I feel as if, not I feel, but I know that it shoots them in the foot because don't they say that doctrine develops over time, or that some doctrines just took forever to be um, doctrines to be brought forth?
Yes, they have to say it. When we say it, it's not some kind of argument that's hard to prove. They have to admit it. It's the only explanation because they are teaching things that they know never existed in the past. So they have to say, well, it developed over time. They make they make arguments that you know they have to make. It doesn't take cleverness. It's something that they're led to say by necessity.
They have to.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, it developed over time. It's like, yeah, that's so clever, so smart. You came up with that explanation. Wow, it developed. Why don't you just admit this stuff never existed? There is no development. You created things in contradiction to what the church always taught. You're not taking an existing doctrine and explaining a little more clearly. That's why with that guy Jonathan, if you guys heard the call I had with him, he was so quick to say that the early church were all accidental heretics. The Catholics have no problem with saying that.
The reason why I brought that up, with them saying that, is because Irenaeus shoots him in the foot. Because doesn't he say that the church, even at his time, had all the doctrines complete
Yes.
and preserved without any addition?
Yes. No addition at
So
all.
yeah, so I feel as if him saying that refutes them saying that some doctrines had to take centuries to develop. Well, Irenaeus says that all the churches around the world had their doctrines complete, all
Yes.
done. And then Tertullian adds to that, or in some way, or Irenaeus makes the same point about the apostles received all these things from Christ, and then the apostles went and planted all these churches and didn't keep anything back, handed them down, and they preserved them. And that's the uh, complete doctrine that Irenaeus, I think, was speaking about. Oh, there's a filler word. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It shoots the Catholics in the foot and shows the hypocrites and liars that they are when even Irenaeus refutes them by saying that at his time all the doctrines were there. So how is it? That's a question that I would maybe ask one of them if I showed them a quote from Irenaeus. Like, how did it take hundreds of years for, or maybe even like what, 1,000 something years for them to finally declare that Mary was sinless? Like, why wasn't this taught by anyone in the church for the first 300 years or after if Irenaeus said that the church had all its doctrines complete without any addition? So, why are you adding this teaching to the church if all that was needed was given to the church already?
Yes. You can see clearly that you must choose between the Ante-Nicene and the current church. There is no such thing as combining the two. Anybody's doing that, what they're really doing is just ignoring the Ante-Nicene church and acting like they don't exist. Just like you have to do with any sin. In order to commit any sin, you have to kind of just purge your knowledge of what you've known to be true. You just have to say, we're not going to think about that right now. Let's just sin. But let me show you something funny, Brian, if you've never seen this. Do you know who all the doctors of the Catholic Church are?
No, I don't really care, so I don't look into
It's a
that.
short list. Well, it's actually really entertaining. You'll enjoy it. Let me just read to you. It's not a very long list. Remember, they only make somebody a doctor if they're some kind of like super teacher. So let me read you a list. It's not very many. I think here, let me look it up. How many doctors of the Catholic Church? It is 37. So let's read them. Let's read their names. You're going to enjoy it. Okay. Now again, guys, doctor means somebody is an expert in teaching doctrine, and they're going to give us a chronological list. So we're going to get people who we're going to start with the people who were first named doctors of the church, and we're going to end with the ones who are most recently declared doctors. And these are people that the church says you go to this person, go to this man, this bishop, if you want to learn what the faith is. And they'll explain it to you the best. Okay, the first person declared as a doctor of the church was Ambrose of Milan. The second person was Augustine. The third was Jerome. Remember I told you, Brian? They love Augustine and Jerome. These are their top boys. Okay, then it was Gregory the Great. He was a bishop of Rome in the 500s. Then it's Athanasius, John Chrysostom, Basil the Great, Gregory of Nazianzus, Thomas Aquinas, Saint Bonaventure, Anselm. Anselm, by the way, says that Mary was not sinless. And Thomas Aquinas also says it. Isidore of Seville, Peter Chrysologus, Leo the Great, Peter Damian, Bernard of Clairvaux. This guy says Mary has sins. So does Chrysostom. So many of these guys. Leo the Great. Or, I'm sorry. Who did I mean? Gregory the Great. That's who he was. And, of course, Gregory of Nazianzus. So many of these guys say Mary has sins. Athanasius says so. Okay, we've got Hilary of Poitiers. He also says Mary has sins. Alphonsus Liguori, Francis de Sales, I'm not sure how to say his name. Cyril of Alexandria. So many of these guys say that Mary has sins. Who knows? Maybe even these guys do. I'll have to look them up. Cyril of Jerusalem, John of Damascus, Venerable Bede, Ephraim the Syrian. He says Mary has sins. John of the Cross, Robert Bellarmine, Albert the Great, Anthony of Padua, Lawrence of Brindisi. Now, by the way, I have a question for you, Brian. Have we heard any Ante-Nicene Church Fathers so far?
No, only
Zero.
posts starting with Augustine.
Zero.
No, Ambrose. I mean,
Yes.
right?
Yes. All right, here we go. Tell me if you noticed anything strange. We haven't got one pre-Nicene church father named yet. And these are people who are being declared doctors of the church in like 1946, 1959. All right, here we go. Next person on the list. Teresa of Avila. Catherine of Siena. Teresa of Lisieux.
They love their women.
They would name a woman as a doctor of the church, 3 women, before they ever named an Ante-Nicene teacher as a church father, as a doctor of the church. Can you believe that?
Imagine living in their time and then just going to this woman, "Hey, Saint Teresa of Avila, teach me the doctrines of Christ."
Yes.
And then she's like, "Oh yes, Mary, beloved Mother of God, Queen of Heaven, sinless from the womb."
It's incredible. I mean, just that fact should make you disrespect these people so much. When you see how much they disrespect Christianity, they just they have no regard for the faith. You'd name 3 women as doctors of the church before any of the Ante-Nicene fathers. What is wrong with you people? And then John of Avila, Hildegard, this is another woman. And then Gregory of Narek. All right? Did you see any Ante-Nicene church fathers?
Absolutely
But
not.
I have some really good news for you because this was published in 2008. Guys, guess what? I gotta break it to you. I've got some good news. Pope Francis, new doctors list. He came out with a new list. Yeah, was it last year? Let's see, who did he add? Guys, he added Irenaeus as a doctor of the church. He just did this in 2022. Thank you. Thank you, Pope Francis, for finally giving us our first Ante-Nicene doctor of the church. Wow. Took
How
long
much
enough.
you want to bet? How much you want to bet he actually never has read
He's never read them.
Irenaeus?
He's never read them. And I'll tell you, Brian, I don't bet. I'm not a betting man. We're not allowed to do any of that. But listen, I'm telling you, I know why he did it. I know why he did it. There are these apologists online right now. They love this one quote from Irenaeus. They've been using it in so many debates. And it's the one where he says, Mary is the new Eve. And they all say, see, Irenaeus teaches that she's the new Eve, and therefore, Eve hadn't committed any sins yet, so she was technically sinless. So Mary is the new Eve, therefore she is sinless. And they say, Irenaeus teaches the sinlessness of Mary. That's what they do. I'll bet it's all because of those recent apologists that he finally did this. He's like, what? What? You mean an Ante-Nicene church father says Mary is sinless? Okay, all right. Who is he? Let's do it. Add his name.
Who is he?
Who
It's
is
kind of
that
crazy.
guy?
Yeah, it's just crazy that they jump to so many conclusions like that just from Irenaeus saying that she's a new Eve. Like, I could never, I could never read that and then just start jumping to conclusions. Oh, Eve, Eve was sinless at some point.
Well, she hadn't
So
sinned yet, so she must
yeah,
represent Mary who is sinless. And think about it like this:
but Eve did commit sins. So what
she
about Mary?
she committed sins later, but let's not talk about that. All right, all right, all right. Let's not talk about that. Guys, who does Eve actually represent? We know that she was a virgin. We can say, okay, she's the new Eve. We can say Mary is the new Eve. But who does Eve represent? Who does
The
Sarah
church.
represent?
The church.
Yeah, the church. Over and over again, all throughout the scriptures. Who does Moses' wife represent? Abraham's wife. Jacob's wife. Both of his wives. Represents the Jewish synagogue and the Christians. Hagar and Sarah. Jewish church, Christian church. And when Adam's wife caused him to have to die because she sinned, and so he follows after her and he eats the fruit and he decides to die with her. What does that symbolize? Does it symbolize Jesus and Mary? No, represents Jesus and the church. That he decided to taste death on her behalf after she brought it on herself.
That's
That's
crazy.
crazy. Nah, that's crazy too. Wait, where'd you find that out? What writing did you read, or did you just like meditate on it?
Well, the church fathers all point out that Christ is represented by Adam and Eve is represented, or the church represents, or is represented by Eve.
Yeah.
If you guys
Yeah,
never
yeah, so
caught
now
it,
it only
they
makes sense.
do you know what the church fathers point out? They say that the earth, which produced Adam with no seed, they say the earth represents Mary. Multiple church fathers say that. Mary's like the earth. But guys, even Mary, even okay, and by the way, Miriam, guys, Moses' wife represents the church. It says he married a Cushite woman, a black woman. Solomon says the same thing. He married a black woman. And it says that Miriam, Moses' sister, gets angry at him, along with Aaron. So his brother and sister take an issue with Moses because of the Cushite woman that he had married. Remember that, guys? You remember what happens to Miriam when she gets angry at Moses for taking the Cushite woman as a wife? God gets angry at her.
She gets leprosy.
Yeah, struck with leprosy. Now, guys, the Catholics and Orthodox love to point out that in the Old Testament, Moses is put in a basket. And who watches over him when he floats down the river to the church, which is Pharaoh's daughter? She comes down to the water to bathe, which represents the church coming to be baptized. And she finds Christ in a basket, and she takes him. But
Wait, wait, wait.
who watches over the
His
little baby?
sister.
His sister Miriam. And the the church fathers and the Catholics and Orthodox rightly point out Miriam is Mary. Did you guys know Mary and Miriam are the exact same name?
Did not.
Yes. So yes, Mary watched over
Oh.
Christ. She took care of him, but they always they glance over, they glaze over this later event where the same Miriam who still represents Mary takes issue with Christ and the people he has chosen, his wife, the people he has chosen to be his. Can we think of any event, guys, in the scriptures when Jesus' mother and brothers, Miriam and his brother, come over and get angry at him about the people he's chosen for himself, and they say he's lost his mind, and he denounces her and his brothers?
That's what came to mind.
All of it is prophetic, all of it repeats. It was prophesied in the Old Testament and it happened in the New. Tertullian points it out. He says Mary is actually a picture of the Jewish synagogue, and his brethren represent the Jews who rejected Christ. They didn't believe in it. So I tell you, these people who always want to say Mary, 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 and they don't recognize even that Mary herself represents the church, which keeps Christ within her and grows him until he reaches maturity. All of us, guys, the church has Christ in them, growing up to maturity. She's a symbol of the church. But if they fail to mention that, or if they fail to recognize that, well, then they're actually accusing Mary of being sinful. Every time the analogy, you see that analogy in the Old Testament of his wife, his bride, sinning or being unfaithful to him. They're like, that's Mary. Oh, at least that's what they would say. It's not Mary, it's the church. Mary did quickly repent. Mary did believe in Christ and obey him. But she still represents the church. And all those women in the Old Testament represent the church. But they would say, these women are prophetic of Mary. No, they're all prophetic of the same thing, including Mary.
Wait, Luke, real quick, sorry to interrupt, but how much longer are you gonna be in here?
I'm leaving now that you're here, Isaiah. No, I'm messing with
Oh,
you. I'm messing with
okay,
you.
I
Anything
understand.
you want, guys. I'll go to bed in like 30 minutes, okay? Well, 20
Okay,
minutes.
I'll be back again because I need to talk to my mom about something real quick.
That's all right. I'll wait here. We're not really talking about anything anyway.
All right.
What do you mean, Luke? This has been edifying. I like it. I hope the other guys do too.
Yes, very enjoyable. I'm not sure what bothers me more. I'm not sure what would make me more angry. if they just decided to never add any Ante-Nicene Church Father to their list of doctors, or they finally decide to add one. They add Irenaeus, but for an evil reason, and they're going to tell people Irenaeus said that Mary was sinless.
But misinterpreting what he said because he didn't literally say that.
He
So it's
sure
like,
didn't.
right?
Nope, he sure didn't. And
I
he
know. I'm just, yeah.
and he and all the others totally decry bowing to an image.
Isn't he one of those who said at the wedding of Cana that, what is it, that Jesus rebuked his mother? I read that, I believe, when I was reading Against Heresies. It stuck out to me. I was like, wait a second. Irenaeus is saying that Jesus rebuked his mother at the wedding of Cana. I think it was that event or another one. But yeah, Pope Francis should see that. See what he thinks about that. Our doctor.
He really should, but none of these guys have read anything.
Just lip service, of course, right?
Just playing games. They're big game players. I'm ready to play the game with them, though, if they're up for it.
You know, I was thinking about what you guys were talking about, and an idea came to mind. Like, if Mary was sinless, the Catholics should expect to find somebody talking about it. I mean, one other person other than Jesus being sinless, everybody should be talking about that. The fact that they can't find anything, that they have to reach and misinterpret one passage by like Irenaeus is crazy to me. They should be worried about it.
You just reminded me of something that I was meditating on. Yeah, you're right. Even with other doctrines, if free will wasn't a thing, the Bible should look way different. The church fathers shouldn't be talking about it like this. You should find way more evidence, you know, even with other doctrines.
The truth
If
is
Mary,
the truth,
yeah,
exactly. If it were true, you would expect to find evidence for it, guys. You would be unafraid. You'd say, oh, we're going to find tons of evidence for this. But they're afraid of the early church. They hate reading the early church. Every time they read the early church, they just get bugged to death by what the early church says. They don't like him. They don't even hide it, guys. That's why you don't see any doctors of the church. Not until just yesterday, literally 2 years ago, guys, they finally said, all right, I guess we'll add one person from the Ante-Nicene Church. Guys, they went all these centuries not ever recommending to go read the early church fathers. They say read some women before you ever read the church fathers. You're right, Raheem. Well, eventually, we all had to come to that point where we just said, okay, let's just accept the truth, whatever it is. Whatever it is, even if it's hard, we're just going to accept it. Whatever we read, we're going to accept it. We're not going to fight against it. Especially when we have so many of them saying the same thing. We're just going to accept it as the truth. Otherwise, if you read the church fathers and you've got this critical eye and you're like, well, do we have to? I don't think you can be saved. You have to just say whatever it is. And then you just take solace in that if it's true, if something is true, you're going to hear it repeated. You're not just going to hear one church father say it. You're going to hear it again and again, and you're going to be convicted and realize, okay, this is a doctrine of the church. They're all saying it. And you should be comforted by it rather than bothered. Just embrace it. And guys, that's why we had to accept difficult things like veiling our wives, even though almost nobody wants to do it these days. We just heard it so many times that we said, wow, this really is a doctrine of the church. We deluded ourselves at first and said, maybe it's just one or two people saying it, but no, it's everybody. But the Catholics are not that honest. They say, not whatever we say currently is true. They have the complete opposite definition of orthodoxy and heresy. They actually, you couldn't have a more heretical definition of heresy. They say whatever we currently teach is true, regardless of what we ever taught in the past. Whatever we currently teach is the truth, even if it contradicts everything that came before. Can you believe that?
change? How can truth change?
And they say that all while claiming to be the ancient apostolic church.
Even though heresy is a bad thing, you really see the beauty in it, that it shows the people who are, the people who want to be saved. People will
Yes.
say, I always want to go to heaven. But do you really want to? Are you really up to the task? You know, okay, are you willing to bail? Are you willing to give up your pleasures? How far are you willing to take it? You know, if you want to be saved.
I had a conversation yesterday with a guy who I've known for quite some time. I we caught up a bit because I've been spoken to him some time. I picked him up at the airport and I drove him to someone's house because he needed a ride. Um, he's part of the church that I used to go to, or the ministry, whatever you want to call that. But I got to talk to him a bit about the church fathers and everything that I've been up to and reading and stuff. And I just randomly brought up hard subjects that the church fathers speak about. And one of them, I mean, it's probably was kind of pointless, but I brought up the veiling as well. And um, I think he does want to get married as well. So I I just brought it up, and it was interesting hearing all the things he was saying, and I could just tell that it was really difficult. Like he wasn't saying it, but I could tell from his face that he wasn't really liking what I was saying because it's such an uncomfortable thing for anyone to hear. And I think a lot of people as well, like they'll acknowledge the early church and say, "Yeah, we do need them to understand the scriptures and stuff like that," but then go out of their way to make all these objections, tons of them, just to uh, reject certain things. Because I told the guy, I was like, "Dude, this is what everyone taught." I tried to explain to him, like, if you want to understand this tradition that Paul gave, which came from Christ Himself, as he says in 1 Corinthians 11, what better way than to see how the church practiced this by looking at the writings, looking at the history? How did the women practice this command that cover their heads? Well, everyone veiled their faces. The women veiled their faces, and uh, and then he sent me a message today saying that he looked into it a little bit more, and that Tertullian didn't seem that he spoke about covering the face. And then I sent him the uh, the website with the dictionary on the quotes, but he left me on red though. But I hope I can maybe one day uh, reach him, especially after you make that veiling video, Luke. I'm really looking forward to that video.
I will. I will. We're working on it.
What are you doing here?
Oh, just putting together random veiling quotes. This guy Roger Pierce, he made a pretty nice. Well, he's kind of doing what we're planning on doing. He's done it on a smaller scale, but he's made a bunch of translations of books on the Patrologia Graeca, and he's translated them into English. So he's already gotten started for us. He's done a bunch here. Definitely not all of them. I mean, probably not even 10%. Probably, to be honest, 1%. But then again, we don't need all of the books on there because they go all the way up to like the I don't know, like the 13 or 1400. So we really don't need stuff that late. But he's translated a lot of stuff, and I was just going through it, clicking on random stuff, doing a word search for things like veil or covering or shamefaced or things like that. And I found a random one written by a guy named Zacharias Retter. He was born in um, Gaza, Israel, and he just gave a history. He gave a little history about various things that happened. He claims that this happened around 150 A.D. This story of this Jewish king who was killing some Christians, and he just says that the Jewish king killed them. He killed a lot of people, and then there was this one. He said, "Don't kill the woman. Don't kill the queen, though. The wife of the king who he just killed." He says, "You know, let's she claims to be a Christian, and they said let's this Jewish guy who's usurping the throne and having tons of Christians, bishops and nuns all killed. He says let's have this woman be paraded through the streets without her head covering and see if we can get her to renounce Christ. And instead, she tells everybody to become Christians. And so they take her out and they chop her head off. But they make a big deal about her face being exposed. She says she nobody has seen her before. What does it say here? A woman whose person no one had seen in the street since she grew up. And she went
Wow.
out going around the streets and squares of the city with her head uncovered. And she does say it's her face specifically. She says, from this day forward, blah, 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 blah. Where did she say her face? Oh, yes. For it was with my face exposed before you all that I went to my former bridegroom, talking about her husband is dead now, and now it is with my face exposed that I'm going to Christ, who is her new bridegroom. So yeah, face covering, clearly face covering.
Wait, Luke. I mean, I can imagine some reasons, but I'm thinking like, they did that to try to get her to renounce Christ. But I'm like, how would that make someone renounce Christ? Because yeah, I mean, well, of course she's not in sin
Well,
because
they didn't
they
actually
had
say
her.
that. They didn't say that um, that would make her renounce. It says, and we
Okay.
bade her go and take counsel, attended by guards from our army. And she went out, going around the streets and squares of the city with her head uncovered, a woman whose person no one had seen in the street. So they didn't say that this act is going to make her renounce.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
was like, I can see she was like embarrassed, or it's like, no, I'm so modest. Like, no one's ever seen my face since I started rebelling. Just
I
my
mean,
husband.
I mean
So,
her husband is killed. Everybody in the city was killed. Tons and tons of Christians were killed. So she's also in mourning here. And she's also ready to die. She's going to her death happily. She tells them, she literally lays down her head, and she says, "Go ahead and kill me." So I don't think she necessarily even cares at this point that she's unveiled. She may have, it doesn't even say necessarily that they did it to her. She may have actually just done it voluntarily and said, "I'm ready to die. Go ahead." She tells her daughters at the end here, just let's lay down and tell them to chop our heads off now.
dang, very non-violent, very I don't know if acquiesce would be the word, but oh, lamb to the slaughter. Yeah.
Yes. And this is this Jewish guy speaking. He says, and since I saw that it was not possible to induce her to deny Christ, for the sake of striking terror into the other Christians, I gave orders, and they threw her to the ground, and her daughters' throats were cut, and their blood ran down into their mouth, and afterwards her head was cut off.
Dang.
That's the kind of spirit
So, but
everyone's wives need to be.
Yes, these women were hardcore, very, very inspiring.
P31. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I'm like, obviously, I'm gonna have a wife who knows all these essential doctrines. She's baptized and all that. But I'm like, it would just be so weird, so awkward to be in some type of situation where because as a Christian, a real Christian, you're non-violent, and if she doesn't know, and she's not on like the same type of timing or doesn't have the same mindset, then it just like would not go well. But she is, and like you guys are just on the same page. Nothing even has to be said.
That's probably why a lot of these issues should be discussed beforehand.
Hmm.
Before you fall in love.
Nah, but speaking of businesses, Dante, um, Luke, by like the end of next year, we need to put that plan in action about like the I don't even know what you would call it, but like the women who are studying but don't have husbands, they have like a house for themselves. But of course, they wouldn't be being idle. Of course, they'd be studying, but then they got also have things like sewing or I know that there's other things, gardening, things like that to make money. I was thinking, I'm like, if people saw like a whole bunch of women who they couldn't see because they're like veiled, I mean, even just women who weren't veiled, but like women they can't see because they're veiled, which makes it even more suspicious. Going into a house and like they barely left, I wonder if they think it's like some type of like I don't know, like trafficking thing.
I don't really care. None of us are going to force any woman to veil. They're all doing it voluntarily. That's an amazing thing that they make. This assumption they make about the Muslim women, but a lot of Muslim women voluntarily veil. And
No, yeah, I was. Oh, go ahead.
you guys remember in the Big Veil video, I mentioned that in a lot of these countries, like Iran, when they actually outlawed the burqa, there was huge outrage from the women. The majority of women were protesting and refused to stop veiling.
Mm,
So most women, when they've been raised that way, they have a sense of modesty and decency. They don't want to be seen by anybody. God designed women naturally to blush, to get all red in the face if a young man sees them. Even when they're young, even when they're a teenager or an adolescent. And then they're taught over time to lose that natural feeling. People will mock them and make fun of them. Their own mothers will say, "You're blushing at seeing a boy. Get over it." But it's designed. She is supposed to be protecting her modesty. And so we're just trying to put that back in the women or to try to replenish what was lost. But it is natural. And I mean, I don't really care what the world thinks if they're trying to override that again. But if any woman wants to go back to feeling what is natural and hiding from the sight of men, then we're going to encourage that.
no, yeah, 100% agree. I wasn't saying because they're veiled or like oh they think we're forcing them to veil, but I meant like if just every now and then you just saw like women going into a house and then like not really coming out that much, you might think something is up. That's what I was saying. But I'm saying it would be even more suspicious if they were veiled because you can't even see what they look like, so they might think that you're trying to hide them or I don't know something like that. Hey, but
Eh.
who
Like
says
it's a cult.
if they search they ain't gonna find nothing? Yeah, or they can think it's
Hmm.
type of code or whatever. But like if they search, they ain't gonna find nothing.
Isaiah, you just got to stop worrying about such things. And if anybody calls us a cult, I will start telling them about who founded their own denomination.
Facts. I was just thinking like a little bit earlier today. Like I wish I would have said this when I was telling one of my friends about the early church stuff and who it is, why we obey them, why they should too, and how to get the correct interpretations of scriptures, the right doctrines of Christ. I was just thinking about saying how every denomination can be traced back to one dude, and it started in whatever area, and then it might have gradually spread, but it can be traced back to one dude, and that dude came X amount of years later after the apostles and their successors. We already had our doctrine set in faith, and oh my gosh, bringing up what is it called? Not Revelation, Second Thessalonians 2:15, and then also Jude 1:3, bringing those up, and then showing them how with this dude, let's say like a Protestant reformer in the I think they came in the 1500s, teaching some doctrine that was totally contradictory to or even just slightly deviated from what the whole church practiced and believed from the very beginning across the whole world. Like why would you believe that doctrine because of that on top of it being founded by one dude? um all those things, and we can see the stuff from the early church was handed down from Jesus to the apostles to their successors, who like the apostles set up as bishops to shepherd the church of God. They faithfully preserve the apostles' teachings. It can be traced. I mean, it is traced back to one dude. Like you trace it back to the early church fathers, to the people, their predecessors. Is that like the opposite of successors?
Right, that's true.
Yeah. Okay, trace it back to their predecessors, to the apostles, which would of course be traced back to Christ, and it was all over the world, like pretty much at like the same time. They didn't have to gradually spread. So that's just showing too, like look at all these denominations, like all these heretics are a much later date. Like you know what I'm talking about. So I just wish I would remember to bring that up, but I seem to like meditate on this stuff more to keep it fresh in my mind and just have the things of God in my mind.
I think there's a quote from Peter from recognitions where he speaks about that if we meditate on, what does he say again? He says that if we have our thoughts on the thought of God alone, that no place will be given to the wicked one, like
So true.
to enter your mind. I can find it. It's a pretty good quote from Peter. Let me get it here. Where did I put it?
Yes, he says also if we ceaselessly study doctrine, that we won't fall into sin.
That's what it is. That's what it is, Luke. It's that one. Yeah, that if we give our minds wholly to the study of doctrine, he says that no place will be given to the wicked one. Yes,
Amen.
exactly.
Yeah, thank you for that quote.
I'm gonna get it right now. I had it saved on a document here.
I I'm gonna read this quote Raheem posted for me. I wish to tell you why it has become many-headed. It has happened that those who first handled it, i.e., philosophy, and who were therefore esteemed illustrious men, were succeeded by those who made no investigations concerning truth, but only admired the perseverance and self-discipline of the former, as well as the novelty of the doctrines, and each thought that to be true which he learned from his teacher. Then, moreover, those oh sorry, then, moreover, those latter persons handed down to their successors such things and others similar to them. And this system was called by the name of him who was styled the father of the, and then it ends off. That's from Dialogue with Trifle. And then the quote from Recognitions, the Apostle Peter said, "For it is necessary to give heed intently and unceasingly to the study of doctrine, that our mind may be filled with the thought of God only. Because in the mind which is filled with the thought of God, no place will be given to the wicked one." That's Recognitions of Clement, Book 3, Chapter 31.
That's a big reason why a lot of us should be spending our time learning on our free time as well.
Yeah,
Like if we're not, speaking with someone and we have the time, then it's good to be learning because if you spend your time learning, like Peter says, that what is it? That no place will be given to the wicked one. And I've realized this myself. On my days off work, sometimes I'll just sit down and open a book and just read for hours or something. I'll just read for a very long time. The hours will pass, and when I look back on the last few hours, I'm like, dang, I don't even think I had one wicked thought come into my mind or anything bad I thought about because I was so
yeah,
focused on reading and learning and the doctrine that was being discussed. So yeah, if we all were to do that on our free time, or even while we're working or at school or whatnot, if we just meditate on doctrines and spiritual things, that definitely can keep away the wicked one from having a placehold in our, I don't know. I'm not even gonna say it like that because it sounds kind of weird. I'm not trying to. You get what I mean, right?
I don't know what you were gonna say, but
No,
yeah, you probably
it's just
shouldn't.
because no, it's because some people may say like, oh yeah, giving a foothold means that you got a demon in you or something. I'm not trying to say it that way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say it that way.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but yeah, basically it's worked in my life whenever I've done that for a lot of the day, and I'm just sitting there typing things, or I'm collecting quotes, reading, or even talking with someone on any kind of subject that's spiritual, and I'm investing time and I'm doing it unceasingly or for a few hours at least. Just my day goes by very quickly, and before I know it, I look back and I'm just thinking, wow, like I didn't think of too many bad things over the day. I don't think I've. You just have no time to sin when you're doing all that stuff.
no, exactly. Like that's something that I would do like a reason I would like to fast, back when I was like a Protestant. Yeah. When I was a I mean, even then when I was a Protestant, I wasn't even really holding to the doctrines. I was still sinning. Man, I'm still getting like I'm still I mean now I'm getting serious, like trying to root sins out of my life. I've been getting better, you know. I repented of gluttony. I'm trying to it's just like a little bit of things, but I'm progressively getting better. I'm gonna keep on doing that. But what I was saying is like, I would think if I'm fasting, I'm not eating, I I quite literally can't commit gluttony. So I can't sin.
You said talking? I'm sorry.
No, no, no. I said if I'm fasting,
Oh, if
since
you're
I'm not
fasting,
eating,
sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
then I can't sin, or like, in terms of gluttony, because it would be impossible.
Luke mentioned it earlier, but in the Shepherd of Hermas, it mentions um, that by daily righteous speech you can overcome all iniquity. So that kind of adds to it. Like if we study and learn doctrines, and then we go ahead and discuss with people those things that we've learned, it's like double. And just by having those conversations, you can learn, be edified, and that can help you to overcome whatever kinds of sins you're going through.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah, yeah, you're right. I thought of like an interesting analogy. Say like two pearl merchants. You know, when
To
they
what?
when they meet up, two traders.
Oh,
Two
traders. Okay.
collectors of fine items. When they meet up, they'll trade interesting items with each other. So it is like with Christians. You go and study, and not you have a brother who's studying as well. When you guys meet up, you share your interesting finds, some cool stuff like that.
Raheem always coming like with the symbolism, you know. He gonna find it for every animal.
Raheem probably sitting out there like his profile picture.
Guys, that's what I be thinking. I'm like, he really just be spending most of the all of his time just meditating. I'm like, oh, okay, now what is the spiritual significance of a giraffe?
Funny enough, not the, sometimes these things just hit me. I'll just be just doing nothing, and then the thought just hits me. Oh, this is what it means. I,
Yeah.
I, I don't think it's like me coming up with these things. I don't
Yeah.
think I'm smart enough for that.
No, yeah, I started to notice like you're good at these things when I heard about like you were saying about the mosquitoes. I think that was you.
Dude, I just thought of this right when one of you guys was mentioning spiritual or symbols or analogies from animals. It just came to mind. What if giraffe symbolizes a busybody, someone who wants to go on other people's business
A
because they have long
giraffe?
necks?
No, giraffes are clean animals. They're good.
No, no, I'm talking about like it's really strange. It just came to mind. I was just bringing it up, but I don't know. I thought of it as like maybe the long neck can be like someone trying to like listen in on other people's businesses, like a busybody. I don't know.
I think since we know that humans are the only ones that stand upright, no other animal does it. They might stand upright for just a minute, but they all travel bent over. We're the only ones that are extended upright. That represents us pointing towards God, us having a relationship with God, not being bent down to the earth, but being able to look up toward heaven. That symbolizes something good. So if a giraffe has an especially long neck, that seems to me to symbolize someone who's especially spiritual.
They have their head in the heavens,
They've got their head in the clouds. Just like we know that mountains, to ascend a mountain means to become very wise because you're closer to heaven.
and that's what Paul says, right? To have your mind set on things above and not on the earth.
You found
A
some good
giraffe,
verses. You got
a
it.
giraffe's mind isn't close to the ground like these four-footed animals. Their heads more in the sky. I think that fits that verse in
Yeah,
Colossians.
that makes sense, because they use their long necks to reach high places to get food. We know that, like grass and these things are represent, because goats and these other animals they ruminate on these grass. That the the food that these giraffes, because they're so high up, could mean that people with elevated like knowledge they can reach higher places, like like to get food. If you understand what I'm saying.
Eating the manna of the word, since man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word which proceeds out of the mouth of God. Could be that, I think. The food, like, yeah, perhaps the food that a giraffe eats, like you're saying, Raheem, it's uh, up on trees or something, or elevated.
Not as many
It just
animals eat
reminds
it.
me, huh?
No, no, no. I thought you were done. I apologize.
No, I'm just trying to pause without saying ums and stuff like that because it's really difficult. But what was I saying again?
You're trying
Yeah,
too
so
hard not to have filler words.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Yeah, you can have like a little bit. Yeah, but that's my fault. I need to get used to
And no,
it
it's
because
fine.
some
I'm
people
just
just talk
saying
like.
that. Oh, my bad, Isaiah. I'm just saying that a giraffe getting food up on elevated trees or things that are up can maybe be like um heavenly bread or spiritual food or something like that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
what I
like
was like
getting
trying to
Word of
get.
God.
or like
I was
getting like the fruit from the tree before it falls and then decays and goes bad. Like you get it from the tree ripe, but it's hard to reach from the top of the tree. I
Right.
mean,
Well, that's a good
giraffes
one.
don't do that.
That sounds, yeah, that sounds good.
You got to
I
be
like that.
extra wise. You got to be extra spiritual in order to reach that higher fruit.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I was thinking about coconuts. Like just thinking about higher things, but like the coconut water is great and really healthy and everything, but the coconut's hard and like takes
You
work
make
to
a
cut
good
it
point,
open, but it takes work to
Adria.
go to the
That's
top and get it.
there are some
Yeah.
trees. Although giraffes live in a place where I don't know if there's a specific kind of fruit that they're always trying to go for. I'll have to look that up. But it is true. Some trees, like pine trees, you guys know where pine nuts come from? They're literally at the very top of the tree. It's at the tip of the tree. I don't know how the tree can even do that, but it grows on the very tippity top of the tree. And you've almost nobody wants to ever go up there, but they can only be harvested if you climb the tree, which is probably symbolic. But I don't know what those giraffes are eating. I thought they just ate leaves and stuff. But giraffes are really good at fighting lions too. They're one of the few clean animals that can actually fight them. It's very impressive. They trample them because they're so large.
do we have any
You
videos
know,
on that?
We do. I was hoping you'd ask.
wait, real quick, Luke, before you show the video. So, oh, Brian, what I was saying earlier, just to finish it real quick, like I had to get used to, someone is, because I didn't know you weren't trying to use filler words. I thought you were done because we're so used to people just, talking so fast, high pitch, like how people talk, but someone who talks slowly, controlled, and takes pauses in between their words and you get the point, doesn't use filler words like that. You might think that that person was done speaking, or when someone asks a question and you don't respond immediately, because some people will start off like, or oh, my fault, Luke, some people will start off answering a question. If I'm trying so hard not to say like, I'm not gonna try so hard. um but someone will get asked a question and then they'll just open their mouth before thinking about what they're gonna say, and then they'll be like, Um, whereas you can just be quiet how you should be and answer the question when you have it formulated in your head, or at least enough. And so it's just something we can, like, I'm not saying it's all of you guys, but just people in general to work on with their speech. But y'all get the point.
It's definitely something I want to start trying to implement more. especially having conversation with you guys, I'd prefer to speak normally and not be saying so many filler words because there's so many that I've used.
Like
Uh, yes, yes, but I'm done talking. Was Raheem gonna say something? I saw his mic on mute before Isaiah started speaking.
I'm doing what Isaiah says. I'm thinking about.
Oh,
Here, let me show you the giraffes. Kicking those lions good. All right, let's get David Attenborough on. This is from Planet Earth. Such a great show. I watch this a lot.
yes, sir.
you're not streaming, by the way.
Oh dear. Let's go ahead and
You
get the
ended.
stream started.
Are you still recording?
Yes. All right, we just got some mean
Perfect.
old lions. Look how muscular that thing is.
The whole pride must work together as a team if they're to succeed.
It's hard to take down a giraffe.
That's
You
a
gotta-
spiritual man.
I want to be a giraffe when I grow up.
That's crazy. Look at these citations. Look at these
Like a-
citations saying.
Like a spiritual man being attacked.
That's what you're meant to think of. They hate to see him
Two
succeed.
lionesses lead the chase. Others race to cut off possible escape routes.
Look at how it runs, though.
It's so graceful. Is it too loud?
No, it's fine.
The giraffe has the speed and stamina to outrun the pride. But it's being chased into a trap.
I mean, its neck looks so ridiculous in proportion to its body.
Ahead, the lead female waits.
I saw the last little weird. I gotta see some humor for sure.
It's now up to her.
Oh, drugged him. Oh my gosh.
Ouchie,
go
here,
with
let's
it.
watch that again.
That's how we trample on Satan.
Let's watch it again.
Oh,
Yeah, stay down.
that
By
was
the blood of
personal right
Jesus.
there.
Like the way it hit him with his chest at first before knocking him down.
Most lion hunts end in failure. But no lions fail more often than those that live in the desert.
Too bad.
That's it?
You
Is there another
lose.
one?
There are more. You guys should get some Planet Earth. You should download the whole series. Seriously, get all the seasons of Planet Earth. Some of it's available.
YouTube?
Yeah, there's Planet
They have-
Earth, BBC Earth,
See this
Nat
one?
Geo Wild. There's quite a few.
Here's a season, or I guess just one episode at least. This is see, they keep changing it, guys. This one's called Our Planet, but this is Netflix's version of Planet Earth. They went and asked the company that produces these nature shows. They said, "Will you do a season with us?" But they had to change the name. So it's all the same producers, same camera people and everything, and same narrator, but this time they named it Our Planet. So that's the Netflix version. And then BBC Earth, you can see they got a few stabs at it. They had Planet Earth, so you can find a bunch of episodes online. But Planet Earth is the one that they did the most seasons. I think they did 3 seasons of Planet Earth, and it's really great, guys. Seriously, every episode. Some episodes are just completely mind-blowing, and then the other ones are just, very entertaining. At least they should be. You should be very entertained. This show is quite incredible. I've showed you guys a few clips from this show. I'm sure you guys remember a few.
Yeah, shoot, we can always hop in the lounge and just watch some nature videos. I'd be down.
So true.
And talk about like the spiritual meanings afterwards.
You should. You should. All right, guys. 11:18. I'm probably gonna go to bed.
Alright.
Can't believe we've been going
Wait,
2 hours.
Oh
Great
yeah,
call,
his
though.
2 hours passed. Yep.
Yes.
Well, again, as always, thank you so much for your very valuable, precious time and all the pearls that you have collectively and
I thank you
choosing
guys.
to bestow them upon us.
You're
For
welcome,
I am
Isaiah.
no man, but a worm.
I say, I hope you speak like that naturally someday.
Well, like the last part quote in the verse, I was kind of playing around. I don't even really know what it means. It's trying to like be humble and modest or whatever.
Well,
You know,
Isaiah,
saying
you and Raheem and Brian and Dante and Adriano have all contributed a lot in our conversations. And I love seeing you guys grow in maturity. None of us want you guys to be inferior to us in any way. We want you guys to be peers and to be equals in knowledge and wisdom and discipline as quickly as possible so that we can be edified by you. You know, we are kind of selfish in teaching you these things and getting you on the right track because we want to be edified. We need other helpers. We need other brothers to help us grow and encourage us. We are encouraged by you guys. Even my little babies, my little 4-year-old and my almost 3-year-old, they actually encourage me. When I hear them say a spiritual word or I hear them say some statement to me, as they occasionally do, I feel very encouraged to see the faith of my children. And you guys are becoming my brothers. So I'm very encouraged by you guys. I really am. I don't feel like I'm just giving you guys encouragement, but I'm also here to help you out because I've been reading for 9 years. So it just happens in life, guys, that people some people are always more mature than others. So I accept that. I know there are people that are a lot more mature than me out there, and I seek their counsel. Oh, I wanted to add one more thing before we go to bed because we were talking about cults. So let me talk about cults real quick, guys. If anybody ever does call us a cult, you should immediately say, hey, you know, the definition of a cult is when some guy like, oh, I don't know, the founder of the Baptist Church, John Smith, he decides that he's got a new version of Christianity. His interpretation of the faith is the only true one. He can't find anybody else in the world that agrees with him. Never has in all of history. He says, nobody's ever understood Christianity. I'm the only one. I'm going to have to found my own sect. And John Smith at the time was the pastor over a congregation, just a little congregation. But he told his congregation some of his new ideas, namely and especially that they all needed to be rebaptized if they had been baptized as babies. And they said, well, John Smith, you would have to get rebaptized. He says, I know. I'm not a Christian. I got to get baptized right now. And they're like, they actually excommunicated him. They kicked him out of the church. They kicked the pastor out of the church. They said, just get out of here. You're insane. And so John Smith went out, found a little river, and dunked himself and baptized himself, which nobody's ever done in history. You can't baptize yourself, guys. It doesn't count. He was so stupid. Well, guys, that's a cult. When you have one guy, can't find anybody in all of history who's ever agreed with what he said. And he invented his ideas. Definition of a cult. And I tell you guys, I thank God that Nolan and Aramis and Christian, that they didn't get everything they believe from me, but that even Nolan, in a short time from reading the scriptures and the fathers, especially because he devoted himself to the fathers, so he's getting all the expert teaching, Nolan surpassed me so quickly in so many ways. And I was just pleased by it. I couldn't have been more thrilled to see Nolan just exploding in knowledge and wisdom, and that he was really seeking it, and God was rewarding him. Um, and in some ways, even more pleasing than Nolan's rapid growth was meeting Christian, because Christian guys were always going to flex. We're always going to bring him up. That Christian, when we met him, had already been reading the Church Fathers for a couple years, and he already believed as we did. He had already come to all the same conclusions we had. And in some ways, even gave us better instruction because, well, we weren't even being as consistent as we should have been in some ways. And we, of course, gave advice to him. It was mutual edification. But guys, that's not possible with a cult. First of all, cults never have new guys walk up and just start instructing the teachers. You know, if I were the teacher in this case and I was just, cult leader. On the contrary, in cults, you always have a lot of control. You always have one guy or a couple people in charge, but especially it goes up to the top, one guy who's receiving tons of money, is usually using the people for something to further his own aims. Usually they're very sexually perverted cult leaders. They want a lot of women. They want to be surrounded by women. And And they claim to have some special revelation from God that God has only revealed to them. And that describes every denomination, but it doesn't describe us who humbly submit to the early church. And it also, it's impossible. Christian defied such an accusation by meeting us and already having all of our beliefs before he met us. And so you would have to say, like, Luke and Christian both separately came up with their own little religions, their own little cult religions, separately from each other. That's pretty amazing how they do that. Well, the answer is they didn't come up with their own religion separately. They both found the religion separately. They found the same religion and then met up and then had fellowship because they had the same faith. So our source is not in any one man. It's in that united church, guys. And just be sure to remind people of that if they ever dare call you a cult. Say, your version of Christianity meets the definition of a cult, but we actually are united with the whole church. If we were living in the first 300 years of the church, we would have a church to go to no matter where we lived. We'd be able to go to church, whichever city we live in.
That's crazy. Now it's the complete opposite.
Yes, and you guys couldn't. You
Oh, I thought I lived on
denominationalists,
this earth.
yeah, you guys could never find a church in the first 300 years that agreed with you. Nobody could, but we would. We'd be at home. So we're not uncomfortable hearing you call us a cult. We're part of Christ's cult because definitely, I mean, Christianity itself is a cult because technically it was started by Christ.
Yeah, I mean, if they wanted to accuse Jesus and then his apostles and then all the bishops and presbyters and teachers and all the church fathers, if they wanted to accuse all of them as being cult leaders, then I mean, okay, but that's
Who else you
I
gonna
don't think
go
that's
to?
an accusation anyone should want to make, and it's an absurd accusation.
Yes.
So
But I also just want you guys also, I mean, you should feel at ease just from the fact that I say go read the church fathers. And I mean, it actually bothers me. If I hear you guys aren't reading the church fathers, I'm upset. I think a cult leader would be like, oh yeah, just listen to me. You don't need anybody else. I'll tell you everything. But no, I'm upset at you guys if you are not getting this information from the real teachers because I'm just summarizing things. I'm getting the food like a penguin or a bird or something, and I'm chewing it up for you, and I'm like not giving it to you as good as you could be receiving. I'm chewing it up for you and putting it in your little baby bird mouth, but it's all yucky now. Go back and get it as fresh as you can from those guys, and that's it. And I will continually bring up Christian because I think that example shows there are other people in this world, and we will continue to meet them, guys. Christian isn't the last one. We just really haven't spread our wings and reached out to people around the world. We're very unknown. We haven't really gone out and made tons of videos. But there are people out there who are doing what we're doing, who've decided just to preserve what was from the beginning. So it isn't
How do you
something you remember, guys. Jake said that he's like Luke has just created this version of Christianity where he's rejecting the Cathodox, and I mean, I should have brought up to Jake. Jake, how do you explain Christian Matlock, our dear brother? Where did he come from? How is it that we ended up with the exact same religion and we were instantly in fellowship when we met each other? How's that possible if it originated with us? Anyway, go ahead, Brian.
I was gonna say, how do you meet Christian?
It was crazy. I'll give you a little story and then I'll go to bed. So I was working at Walmart. My brother Matthias was working at Walmart. And we're learning about the early church and we're just doing our thing, And we had met Nolan, of course. We had met a few other people who were learning about the early church. I had recently gotten married. And so, Matthias is working at Walmart, and he gets home one day and he says, "Hey, Luke, this old man at Walmart, very elderly man who works there, he asked me if I want to go on like a camp out with some of the people at his church. They do this little retreat out in a cabin in one of the state parks here in Texas, and he asked me if I want to go. And I was like, oh, Matthias, don't go with him. It's gonna be miserable. You're gonna be with those people." And he says, well, Luke, it's a Church of Christ denomination. They're not as bad as a lot of the others. They read the Bible a lot, and maybe we'll be edified. Luke, I feel like I could enjoy a nice little camp out retreat type thing. I said, oh, Matthias, don't do it. And he said, Luke, it's only like, $200 or something for the whole thing. I'm like, what? You have to pay money, Matthias? That's even more reason you shouldn't do it. It's a complete waste of time. Don't do it. And Matthias said, well, look, I kind of feel like doing it. I was kind of being controlling with Matthias. I was thinking, you should be saving your money. Don't be wasting money. And I said, listen, Matthias, if you go on this thing, only one of two things will happen. Either you'll get there and you'll try to tell them the faith, and they're not going to listen to you because they're out there. They're going to have some of their teachers with them. They're not going to listen to you. You know, they'll shut you down if you start contradicting them, and you're just going to instantly get shut down, then be miserable for the rest of the trip because you tried to confront them and they wouldn't listen. Or you're just going to be silent in the background and you're still going to feel like it was a waste of time. And those are my two options. And I guess God was proving me wrong because there was a third option of what happened. And I said, Matthias is going to be a waste of time. Matthias said, I'm still doing it. I said, all right, whatever. So then Matthias comes back to us a few days later, like a week later, and he says, well, guys, he pulls up his phone and he gives us a little picture. He says, do you see this picture? I want you all to look at the face of this man, and I want you to understand you have a new brother. We all have another brother. Look at this man. Love this man. He's part of our family. And we're like, who is that? And it's this bearded guy, just some young bearded guy. And we're like, who is this? And he's like, well, guys, this is our brother Christian. And he tells me the story of how he's sitting in the background. They were doing baptisms while they were at this little retreat. Matthias was sitting in the background just watching it, and he sat down next to another guy. And Matthias just randomly said, it's kind of unfortunate how they're doing this baptism because, this really isn't how Christians used to be baptized. They used to be baptized quite differently than this. They have confession of sins, and they be, immersed 3 times in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and, they renounce the devil and all his works, and that was always part of a baptism. And Matthias said to me, yeah, I know, I've read the church fathers where they say that. And then Matthias says, you what? What are you talking about? And he goes, yeah, I've read the church fathers. It's like, you read the church fathers? Which church fathers? And he's like, the Ante-Nicene church fathers, I read them all. And Matthias is saying, Matthias has never met anybody who's ever been reading the church fathers. He's like, tell me about them. What do you know about the church fathers? And Christian just starts telling him all the doctrines of the faith. And Matthias is like, how do you know all this? Where did you come from? And he's like, do you have any friends or anybody that believes like you do? And he said, no, I've just started reading the church fathers a couple of years ago. And yeah, I kind of just don't fit in here with this church. But, I'm just still here with them. And I'm hoping maybe I can change them from the inside, kind of infiltrate. And so Matthias made friends with Christian and brought him home. And so we sat Christian down on the couch as soon as we met. We're like, okay, all right, we want to have fellowship with you. We need to ask you some questions. All right, we need to question you. So we start interrogating Christian. We sit him down on the couch and we just start asking him questions about every subject we can think of. Christian, what do you know about this subject? What do you know about this one? And what do you think about this one? And Christian's just smiling at us. And, Christian's so laid back. He's just like, well, he just tells us, he gives us the explanation of that doctrine. We go, incredible. How does he know all this? Christian, what do you think about this subject? And, we did every subject we could think of, guys. And Christian already knew all of it. And he'd only been reading 2 years, but guys, Christian's an avid reader. I hope it encourages you guys that if you were to read really intensely for a couple years, like Christian did or Aramis did, you would be an expert. And he was. And he also was living it. He didn't just know it, he was acting it out. So we loved him, and we kissed him and hugged him. And he was our brother immediately.
That sounds like a very miraculous. I mean, it's kind of strange to say miraculous, but it does sound like God definitely brought you guys all together. It's a work of God for all that to work out that way.
Yes, it is not the cult of Luke, but it's, I guess I'll have that accusation against me. Whatever, I don't even care. I know it's not true. You guys know it's not true. You guys can always test it. You can always read it. If you find out, guys, that I or Aramis or Christian or Nolan have missed something, we want you to tell us. We want you to say, you know what, guys, we're missing something. Or maybe you're aware of it and you're just not living it. And let's be consistent. And we want you to say it. You guys are not submitting to us. We are all submitting to the church, to our mother that God gave us. Not Mary, the church.
Nah, you kind of like our bishop though. I see you as a bishop. I mean, I know you're not like actually how a bishop would be, but you can kind of get what I mean because you're way more knowledgeable and way more righteous than me. So I submit to y'all for.
Well,
I mean,
I want you
to the early church, but like you know what I mean. I know you guys don't have like actual God-given authority, but
exactly.
I would listen to y'all because y'all been studying this for so long, so you can tell me everything.
Well, Isaiah, I know that I'm not a bishop, and I've said that so many times. In fact, I used to overemphasize it that I'm not a bishop, and then sometimes people would act up. Some of the people that we met, some of the people who we've talked about before, who we lost contact with, and now I realize we all should have been so much more stern. I should have been stern with them. But I would always just say, well, I'm not a bishop, I can't really tell you what to do. But now I realize we need to exhort each other, and we need to rebuke each other if we see us falling off the rails, falling off that path. We need to be stern. You have the you have the responsibility, you have the right to do that, just like you would in a family. You are in a family, and we Christians have to do that with each other. So, no, I can't formally excommunicate you, but I will tell you what I know the church would tell you, and I'm going to say it with authority, with their authority, not my own authority.
Yeah, hierarchy and authority is still natural regardless of official succession being having been destroyed. There's still natural hierarchies. It's natural for us to want to have teachers and for students to then become teachers of students later on. So I think it's, we, all of us sought to have someone to learn from. I've always been looking at people to learn from, and I'm happy I eventually found the early church and others who know the early church better than me, who I could learn from. So I thank God.
Yes, praise God. I'm happy for you too, Adriano. I'm very happy you have brothers. All of us here. It'd be hard to do it alone. Well, all right, guys, I'm going to bed then.
All right. God be with you. Thank you so much, Luke.
God be with you.
God be with you too, Nathan. Good night, guys.
God be with you all.